June the 1st, 2021 is now in session. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. During our moment of silence this evening, I would ask that we all take the time to consider how fortunate we are to live in or own a home or a business in such a special place as Southern Shores. Just a reminder to be grateful for all we have and enjoy. Please join me. Thank you. Council, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Leo. All in favor of approving the agenda as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have an agenda. At this time, Council, I'd ask that we consider the consent agenda, which is item 1, the approval of minutes, which have been emailed to Council from March 16th, 2021 workshop, and the budget amendment, a budget amendment to address seasonal cut-through traffic measures, no left turn weekend, June 26 and 27 specifically, page 3 in your book. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Leo. Do I have a second?
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor? Anyone opposed, say no. I know. Motion is made and carried to move forward with the consent agenda. Budget amendment. I'm sorry. Staff reports. Our Deputy Town Manager, Planning Director, Wes Haskett. Good evening, Wes.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I have a very brief report for y'all tonight for the month of May. There were a total of 51 permits issued. Those consisted of 12 zoning permits, 16 building permits, 23 trade permits, and the total amount of fees collected was $16,054.30. With respect to the Town Planning Board, they'll be holding their regular meeting here on May 21st at 5:30. And the purpose of the meeting is for the board to consider the revised temporary healthcare structures, ZTA, that was tabled at our request at the last meeting. Y'all's last council meeting. Any questions?
Council?
No.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
This time I'll call Ed Limbacher, our fire chief, for his report. I think Ed wants to introduce us to a new deputy chief.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
So it's with great pleasure. Most of you already met our new Deputy Chief, Matt Dudek. Started with us the 17th, so he's our new Deputy Chief. Just a little bit about Matt. Matt is a veteran of the U.S. Navy, serving over 7 years. While on duty at the end of his enlistment, Matt volunteered as a volunteer firefighter with the City of Virginia Beach and completed his paramedic training at Tidewater Community College. After being honorably discharged, Matt returned to his native upstate New York with his wife, Sarah, to raise their children closer to family. He immediately entered the New York State Fire Academy and began his 20-year career as a professional firefighter, retiring as the captain with the City of Troy. Matt and his wife, Sarah, had planned on moving back to the area when they got older, but finding the job posting in Southern Shores just sped up the process. They currently have a house under contract in the town and plan on moving the rest of the family down in early July. They have 3 boys, 2 will be in college, and their youngest will be moving to Southern Shores this summer. In addition to his service with the fire department, Matt also has a background in education with 7 years' experience teaching both fire and EMS classes. He holds a bachelor's degree in emergency management from the State University of New York and a master's degree in Homeland Security with the Naval Postgraduate School. just help me congratulate Matt. We're very pleased and fortunate to have found him. So welcome, Matt.
Indeed. Welcome. Thank you, Matt.
Welcome.
Thank you. And glad to be here. Look forward to serving the town and working with all of you. I'm really thoroughly enjoying it so far, and I can't wait to get the family down here. They're excited as well. So,
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
thank you.
much, Matt.
all right.
Matt is going to get out of here because he has to go handle training for now. So
Yeah, it's Tuesday night.
have fun with that, Matt.
It's
They're actually
training
on,
night.
they're actually on a fire call now, so he'll
Oh,
go
there you go.
catch the tail end of that. So tonight, for last month, May's fire report, 72 calls. So 4 building fires, 1 gas or odor or vapor explosion, 34 EMS calls, 1 vehicle or 2 vehicle accident with injuries, 1 with no injuries, 1 search for missing person, 1 stalled elevator, 1 surf rescue, 1 gas leak, 1 power line down, 1 arcing, 4 service calls, 1 animal call, 1 assist the police, 1 public service, 3 canceled en route, 1 smoke care, 5 alarm activations, 1 CO, 3 smoke detector, unintentional, 1 malfunction, and 1 alarm system unintentional, and 1 special type incident. A total of 72. That compares to 38 last year. So you can see COVID affected last year because I looked back and it was about 76 the year before. So we're right back to where we're typical summer stuff. So any questions?
Nope, I didn't none.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
Town Attorney? Anything to report?
No, sir.
Thank you, Ben. Our Town Manager, Cliff, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. First, the council had asked at the last meeting that staff look into the possibility of reassessing the special assessments for the 2017 beach nourishment project. As you know, those fees were assessed over 5 years. The general statute does allow up to 10. However, once that process is put into place by resolution and adopted formally, it's virtually impossible to go back and amend that. I had hoped that I could use the word irregularity to mean that having a project in 2022 when the 2017 was not yet or finished being paid for, but the legal term of irregularity means that there was a mistake in the process. I've confirmed this with the town attorney and with the School of Government that the statutes aren't very forgiving. And so I'm sorry to say that that's kind of, that last payment will still be due in the 5th year. Also, you directed a while back that the town engineer complete engineering for the last segment of Hillcrest. We have already designed a portion of Hillcrest. There's a portion that was going to be extended, I think, all the way to NC 12. He's still working on that. Got the survey back last week. And so I'm hoping that we'll have that design work here soon. Also, at the July 7th council meeting, we're planning to have CEPI, the pavement and condition study, the consultants that did that project, to present the results to you at your July 7th meeting. They're in the process of finishing up the CIP now. I'm hoping to get staff together one more time week after next. And they're going to present that. And then from there, we'll take it to the capital improvement street committee and kind of vet it out and have some recommendations moving forward. The budget that you'll be having a public hearing on shortly, it does have an amount of money in the budget for Hillcrest if you chose, or an amount to deal with the results of the pavement condition study. A project that's going on now, Sea Oats. Sheila, can this go? That's okay. The project's still on schedule. If we look, will it come up? There it is. Right now, they're finishing up the ABC base, which was, if you look at number 7 on the list, that's from May 21st till June 7th. And then from there, next week, they'll be starting on the driveways and curb cuts. And they've got, the completion date on this project is July 16th, but they are on schedule. Let's see, what else did I want to? I think that's all I had to report. Any questions?
Thank you, Cliff. Any questions, council? You guys are quiet tonight. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're going to open public comment by reading some correspondence we received from residents. And this will be the last time we'll do this as a matter of routine. In the future, I will expect you, if you want to make public comment, you come and make it or send us in writing. But don't expect us to read your letter to the public. It'll just be like we've always done it. You can come and speak or you can not speak, but we're going to not keep handling public comment at the podium. It's going to have to come from the public. You want to go for the first one? We've got 5 of these to get through. It'll take a few minutes.
Yeah, I can start off.
All right. Thank you.
This is from Andy and Penny Lowbread, who live on Sea Oats Trail. My wife and I are in the process of closing on a new home on Sea Oats Trail. We are lifelong visitors to the area and simply love it as all of you do. In fact, when recently deciding whether to relocate from Richmond to other coastal areas, we chose Southern Shores over Hilton Head, Wilmington, Charleston, and Savannah. We did this because of the unique attributes that you can only find in a soundside and ocean community like Southern Shores. Add the wonderful community amenities/people, and you have a special place. To just learn that our new special place is overridden with unnecessary, inconvenient, and dangerous cut-through traffic is beyond disappointing. I've read quite a bit on this over the past month, including the traffic study that was done. We have also experienced it during a recent visit. The inaction that has been taken to address this is troubling and irresponsible. The fact that a meager $30,000 has been allocated to traffic mitigation in this year's $8.8 million budget speaks volumes about the disinterest local leaders apparently have in addressing the problem. As new homeowners, can someone kindly explain to us why this has not been a priority issue to resolve? With all due respect, how would you like an RV parked in front of your house for over an hour because of the traffic on a residential side street, barely wide enough to accommodate 2 oncoming cars, much less an oversized RV? Or stacks and stacks of cars parked in front of your house for hours during summer weekends? It seems to us that blocking turns at the key access roads that cut-through traffic uses in the community are worth exploring and pursuing for the betterment of our entire community. Please take action now. Thank you. Sincerely, Andy and Penny Lowbread.
Thanks, Elizabeth. No change of pace here. This is from Mr. Panoff, 104 Ocean Boulevard. Please read for the public record 6/1/2021, Mayor and Town Council. Thank you for the opportunity to have my comments read for the public record. As you all know, I have been writing several notes to the council. I appreciate the responses and the engagement on my concerns as a property owner in Southern Shores. Today, I want to review some points as you weigh the revenue requirements for beach nourishment. Through several correspondence to the town council and town manager, I have laid out a fair, equitable solutions that will still have the owners in MSD 1 and 2 paying over 50% of the costs associated with beach nourishment. The scenario proposed by the town manager has the oceanfront and oceanside property owners, 25% of the properties in Southern Shores, paying 73% of the debt with a 100% tax increase. This is not proportional to the benefit. As you weigh how to pay for this project, I implore the town council will take into consideration total cost to property owners. Even with a 9.86 rate increase, taxes for owners in MSD 1 go up 50% versus 27% for those outside the MSDs. A 9 cent increase raised my town taxes $1,170 versus $300 for a $500,000 property not in an MSD. I asked the town council to be sensitive as to how much additional benefit they assign to those in MSD1 and MSD2. There's no immediate need or protection that is required for the Southern Shores oceanfront. In fact, the engineering report identified only 27 structures that are at risk for a model storm. Of that, this project can only reduce that by 1/2 before you get to diminishing returns. 27 structures, 1% of all properties of Southern Shores, and 16% of the structures in MSD1. Raising taxes 100% for MSD1 and 14 properties does not seem fair. The additional options from staff still has MSD and MSD1 and MSD2 paying 65% of the debt, with 75% increase in our town tax. Another view is that 6% of the property owners, MSD1, are paying 34% of the debt. Again, MSD1 and MSD2 property owners are not getting a demonstrative benefit. The engineering report makes that clear. That leaves the number one benefit, a wider beach for all of us to use. If our tourism is the focus of the town and the beach accessibility is our number one commodity, then I intend to contend that the benefit weighting needs to be much different than the basis of location. Whether you rent your property or not, the accessibility, health of the beach is what brings folks here and keeps all property values throughout the town. The council has been offered many different scenarios that are significantly better than a 100% tax increase in MSD1. These different options allow the town to generate the revenue for the project without undue burden on any one property owner. Even with a 6-cent tax increase for the non-MSD properties, that's $25 a month for a $500,000 property. Using a 9-cent tax increase in MSD1 is $112 a month for a $1,500,000 property. This is proportionate, and places more financial burden on the property owners in MSD1. This, I believe, is the intent of having the MSD. Please vote for fair taxation today. It is something that will benefit us all. Thank you again for your time. Tim Panoff, 104 Ocean Boulevard. Thank you.
This is from Wendy Hawkins. I believe she resides at 96 South Dogwood. Our elected officials, a decision to stop excessive vehicular traffic on our residential streets needs to be addressed, funded, and implemented tonight. This is a main issue of concern for the town of Southern Shores, and it's a major issue. I've seen study after study, meeting after meeting, and the only outcome seems to be, quote, ignore. As elected officials for the town of Southern Shores, why are you not stopping the now hazardous situation? I've heard what your options are, what your friends' opinions are, but why not listen to the wants and needs of its citizens are? We have all given up our weekends and we stay off the roads, and our safety is at risk just being near the roads. I presume you will take full responsibility for my safety and the safety of all the Southern Shore citizens with respect to the cut-through traffic until you decide to correct this ongoing situation. Perhaps use the millions of dollars being taxed for your wanted sand, not needed sand, to make our town better and safer and stop the cut-through traffic now. We moved from Scottsdale to Duck, and it didn't take long to decide we wanted to live in a residential neighborhood and not a tourist area. Over 15 years ago, we moved from Duck to Southern Shores, where we found our neighborhood. It is apparent that you, our town leaders, don't have the vision for keeping our neighborhoods and not addressing any of these safety issues and concerns. Please correct the situation. Wendy Hawkins.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This next letter is from Van and Karen Price, 18 Ocean Boulevard, from May 23rd, 2021. Dear Mayor Bennett and town council members, at the town's budget meeting this last week, the council asked for suggestions concerning new plans and specific tax rates for funding the public town project of beach nourishment. Please review our 1175 plan that we proposed on Wednesday, May the 19th to the mayor. This plan is the most fair and most equitable of all the plans with MSDs. Town Manager Ogburn reviewed the plan and said it was doable. Under this plan, the taxpayers in MSD1 still will pay a tax rate more than double those not in the MSDs and substantially more than those in MSD2. Please understand that lowering the town-wide tax rate from 5 cents to 4 cents will only save the average non-MSD taxpayer $50 a year. However, it increases the MSD1 taxpayer's debt by about $500 a year. This is a lot of numbers here, so I'm having a hard time following it too. This is simply because there are so few people in the MSDs and so very many people not included in the MSDs. Saving non-MSDs only $50 costs me and my MSD tax-paying neighbors $500 more. We are willing to pay our fair share as we will be paying nearly 6 times the dollar amount in new taxes in our plan, $1,430 versus $250. According to the North Carolina State Constitution, tax rates must be fair and equitable. Council's proposed tax rate plans are not fair or equitable. The Southern Shores newsletter on Friday, May 21st was very misleading and deceiving. They claimed the average house in MSD1, MSD2, and the non-MSDs was $500,000. Anyone can tell you this figure is misleading and false. The average beachfront house in MSD1 is at least $1,300,000 and not $500,000. Obviously, the charts given by the town are flawed as they do not represent the average taxpayer in each zone. Do not represent what the average taxpayer in each zone can realistically expect to pay. I'm currently paying nearly $9,000 in taxes each year. Under the town's new tax plans, my tax bill will increase to nearly $12,000 a year, which is too much. My increase is just town taxes is more than what those in the non-MSD will pay in total tax. This is not fair when everyone enjoys a public beach. Please see the chart below that shows how the 1175 plan for tax rate increase works and what the average taxpayer in each zone can expect to pay based on the average property value in that respective zone. The chart below clearly shows why the town-wide tax rate must be 5 cents and the top MSD tax rate increase must not be higher than 11 cents. And the chart shows MSD1, an average home value of $1,300,000, a tax rate of 5 cents plus 2 cents plus 4 cents is 11 cents. Total town tax bill increase for someone in MSD1 with a house of that value goes up to $1,430 a year. MSD2, which is a $750,000 home, at once again 5 cents, 2 cents, and 0 tax for the town-wide goes up $525 a year. And a non-MSD property owner with a $500,000 home at a 5 cent tax increase would go up $250 a year. Their tax would. Please compare the 1175 plan mentioned above to other tax plans proposed by the council that are neither fair nor equitable. After analyzing the math, note that lowering the bottom rate from 50 cents to 40 cents, from 5 cents to 4 cents, only saves non-MSDs about $50 a year. As a consequence of this small saving, it increases MSD1 by nearly $500 a year. The fact that that MSD1 is already paying the most taxes in Southern Shores and does not need to be singled out for another huge tax rate hike. With your proposed tax hikes, most taxpayers in MSD1 will see their total bill nearing $12,000 a year, while the average homeowner not in MSDs will be paying around $3,000 a year in total taxes. Taxpayers in MSD1 are already paying more than their fair share for a public town project that is open to all and benefits the entire community. If the town council found it fitting to pay equally for the famous canal dredging project, the largest infrastructure project in town history, then it should apply the same criteria to this public town project. The beach is even more accessible than the canals are, as there are 33 access points to the public beach and very few to the canals. Additionally, unlike the canals, the public beach attracts tourists and boosts the economy for the entire town. They show a town-wide tax rate plan with a 4 cent non-MSD tax rate is not fair or equitable as shown below. In MSD property, MSD1, the home value of $1,300,000 at a tax rate increase of 4 plus 3 plus 0.715 works out to a total town tax bill increase of $1,885. In MSD2, a $750,000 home with a 4, 3, and 7 cent tax increase shows a increase in a town tax bill of $525. In a non-MSD property worth $500,000, being taxed at additional 4 cents only generates $200. Contrary to popular belief, Southern Shores is a beach town. Everyone benefits from the public beach. Access and proximity to the beach are used to sell or rent homes all over Southern Shores in the non-MSD area. Simply put, the public beach is a huge selling factor and the best asset we all have as a town. We are willing to pay our fair share for the benefit of the community, but the rest of the town needs to pay their fair share as we did for the canals. Everyone paid equally for the canals, and we did not complain even though we did not receive any benefit from them. Remember, the tourists spend their money for the beach, not the canals. People living in Southern Shores have jobs and businesses because of the beach. Thus, everyone benefits from the public beach. It is reasonable to ask non-MSDs to pay $250 a year at a 5 cent town tax increase. Again, 1175 plan is the only fair proposal if you must use MSDs. Thank you kindly. I can be reached at his phone number, Van and Karen Price, 18 Ocean Boulevard, May 23rd, 2021. That completes that one. Thank you.
Okay, this is from John Worthington, who lives at, who has property at 363 Sea Oats Trail. Dear elected town officials, I would like to give you an update on the hell our neighbors and I who live in this construction zone have endured during this Memorial Day weekend. The traffic that was allowed through this area during the construction phase was unnecessary and the worst I have experienced since 2014. Constant traffic driving by and creating rock dust that has covered our yards, decks, porches, windows, pools, and automobiles. I cannot believe that there was not some signage posted in a serpentine manner stating the road was closed except for local traffic. I won't even get into the fact that this project should not have even been attempted at all during this time of the year, and for the fact that by improving the road, more people will be using this as a cut-through, thereby causing even more traffic in the future. By doing this project, all the town has done was to ensure that more people will be cutting through because you have made it even better for them doing so. We have no complaints about Barnhill, as they have done an excellent job of addressing any concerns or problems the neighborhood has presented to them. I just want to say that the placing of barricades or signage placed in an offset manner with road closed except for local traffic at the intersections of 11th and Sea Oats and NC 12 and Sea Oats, while it may not cut down on all traffic, it may help cut it back to a manageable and livable level. I would like this letter read at the council meeting Tuesday night. John and Lori Worthington.
You got another one?
That's it?
No more? Okay.
Do people sign up?
At this time, I'd like to call on Lillis Morrison, 43 Fairway Drive. Good evening, Lillis. Thank you.
Hi, Lilius. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about the Northern Dare Library Committee, which was appointed by yourselves about 18 months ago to pursue the possibility of a library branch here in Southern Shores for the benefit of the northern beaches. The committee made very good progress until everything got closed down by COVID last April, March, April. And however, we have reconvened and resurrected. And in fact, last week, we went to the commissioners and presented our case updated, which is represented in the handout I've just given you, to pursue this project. The first thing is that the committee continues to receive support and interest from all parts of the community. Before we closed, just at the point that we closed down, we had many people from Southern Shores and Duck especially saying how they look forward to coming on their bikes and to the Juniper Trail site to get books, and of course, computer and Kindle books as well. So support continues. However, point number 2, there is an increased need for books and research, both computer-based and print-based, on account of COVID-19. The impact of the COVID-19 epidemic here in this area has been significantly to increase the number of year-round residents of people of all ages. It seems that the Outer Banks, and particularly a town like Southern Shores, has great appeal from people in faraway cities, and they want to come here. Hopefully they won't want to change it to be like where they came from. But many people who are coming would love to have the same library facilities and opportunities which are offered in other places. And I think we have to say that for many of us who have been here on the Outer Banks during this incredible time, have found that our getaway has been through books and various computer research and so forth. Books are not read less, they are not written less. If you look at the Sunday supplements, more books than ever are being written and produced and are there to expand our horizon. A further point about the need and use is, of course, with the increase, all the Zoom and at-home work and research, there is ever more need for the variety of library facilities. With increasing traffic, of course, which we are very conscious in our community, but all the roads in Kill Devil Hills and Nag's Head are also traffic filled. It will save time for northern residents to have a local branch here and not to have to travel. And of course, it will be less carbon pollution as well. The good news, point number 3, is Town Bank, which had generally offered its facilities in on Juniper Trail, has confirmed that their offer still stands. So if we can get the funding, we can go ahead with this project and everyone enjoy a branch library. The county commissioners last April, a year ago or so, did ask the county librarian to put together an operational budget. So we have an operational budget of around 150,000 a year. The upfit of books and computers and that sort of equipment would cost about 150. And our estimate for adapting the facilities to comply with fire code and so on is also about 150. And so we now have working numbers. Finally, the commissioners, we asked the commissioners on May the 17th to continue to find funding and put us in the budget. And so we haven't had a response. At this moment, I can't say we're in the budget, but we have an small but enthusiastic group looking at ways and means. which I won't go into now, we hope we will report. Funding is the big issue, and we hope to report that, more on that to you in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lillian. Appreciate your reports this evening. At that time, I'll close public comment this time. Under new business, council, public hearing, town manager's fiscal year 2021-22 recommended budget. Ben, do you want to take this over, the public hearing portion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager, I assume you want to speak first. So we will open the public hearing for the town manager's recommended budget, and we'll have Mr. Ogburn provide his presentation, and then I'll call on members of the audience. Do we have a sign-up sheet? So we'll start with the sign-up sheet, but I'll ask if anyone else wishes to speak after I get through the sign-up sheet.
Actually, I think I could just forego that and just, I wanted to, the public hearing, of course, is on the manager's recommended budget that's been in the clerk's office. It's been online since the day after it was presented. You had a workshop May 18th. From that discussion, there are some items that we would like you to consider, including or more or less adjustments to the budget, none of which result in any increase in taxes or permits or fees. But one of the big one for the expenditures was we needed to be able to add the cost, the revenue for the beach nourishment project. One second. In the manager's recommended, there's tax increase for each of the two municipal service districts and townwide. That revenue amounts to $1,074,628. So that's included as part of the budget amendment. And then there was also an adjustment that we needed to be made for motor vehicles that we needed to back out. And that was a decrease of $192,077. And we, in order to make up that shortfall, we increased some of the budgeted revenues by $96,000. That's interest income, building permits, occupancy, sales, and land transfer, and an increase of $47,000 in fund balance. And then to balance that on the expenditure side, of course, again, the MSDs of that $1,025,074, we increased the tree and branch removal by $25,000, and then there was a reduction in the police department by $53,950. So all this is reflected in your packet, the ordinance. We needed to put a number in there. Obviously, there's still discussion and decision to be made about the rates that'll be established, and we can adjust those revenues in the budget ordinance at your direction.
Thank you.
The first person on the list is Dave Mackey. If you could come to the podium and state your name and address.
Dave Mackey at 218 Ocean Boulevard. Thank you again. I feel like it's a deja vu. I was hoping that Cliff might be getting to the rates, the tax rates, and I'm going to cut what I'm going to say very short because you read a lot of it in the letters. If you haven't guessed it, all of us have been talking. When you asked for examples or suggested rates, many spreadsheets came back and forth to show how we might adjust the tax rates for MSDs to come to something that's more equitable. And so the 1175 plan that I think you all have seen, I know Cliff has seen, was a good example of basically how if the rate going from 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 to 5 in the town-wide area that isn't including MSDs really doesn't have a huge impact on the actual tax dollar increase for most, and I do say most residents who aren't in the MSDs. I know there will be some residents in that area that will have some pretty hefty tax increases because there's some valuable properties in there. But But for the most part, you're talking about an actual cost increase of $175 to $250, and going from 3 to 4 to 5, even to 6 is not is affordable. I don't like to say that because my judgment of what's affordable for individuals is purely abstract, but is for the most part affordable to people. By contrast, the rates in MSD 1 range from $1,800 to, I've seen scenarios that take those rates as high as $3,500, the increase. And so it's the balance between 2,000 homes contributing to the town-wide rate and only 170 homes contributing to the MSD 1 rate. And I'm not talking about MSD 2, but it fits in there. There's just a huge impact for every $50 decrease in the 2,000 homes. There's I think, I want to ask you to repeat that letter. I think there's a $500 increase in MSD 1. And all we're asking is make it equitable. And we think, many of us who have been down in the spreadsheets, down in the details, understanding this, coming to seeing the workshop, my disadvantage is I don't know what I don't know. But I think we've delved pretty deeply into the details of this and understand it enough to say there is a workable plan that can have lower MSD 1 and 2 rates and higher MSD or higher town-wide rates that will work for all. I think, and I don't know whether it was the last meeting or the budget workshop, I think there was a request to say, can we cap the town-wide rate at 4 cents or at the most 4.5 cents? And the honest answer is there's really no reason to do that. That's just an arbitrary desire to try to put a number out there. And there was a request to say, come back to us with other suggestions. Well, we've come back now with other suggestions, and we're hoping they're getting enough attention. So I do appreciate this. I know from listening to the workshop that everybody's kind of struggling with ways to approach this and different looks at it. And I know not everybody sees that stuff, but I know how hard y'all are working, and I hope you see how hard we're all working as well. But thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Paula Sherlock.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I feel sort of like the mayor reading that letter a few minutes ago. I'm very lost in the weeds in a lot of these numbers. My name is Paula Sherlock. My husband and I own property at 66 Ocean Boulevard, and we've owned that house for over 20 years. I loosely represent about 22 other property owners who own property from 50 to 68 Ocean Boulevard. We've looked at a lot of these, not maybe in the depths of some people, but I think many of us are in favor of that 1175 plan. Cliff was nice enough to run the numbers for me, and I think it maybe wasn't under that plan, but close to it. Our personal tax bill just for our Southern Shores taxes would increase from $2,767 to $5,371. And we own a pretty modest place that would never have a market value of over $1 million except for where it is. And so that's how it's going to affect many of us. I do want to comment on one thing. In a lot of these plans, there seems to be a big disparity between the MSD1 and MSD2. For instance, I'm looking at, I'm not sure this is the latest, of a rate of 12 cents as compared to a rate for MSD2 for 3 cents. Maybe I'm confused about where MSD2 is. It seems like it's right across the street from me. Those are the people who load the beaches at every crosswalk, every access. There are enormous rental properties on the other side of the street from me that are not single-family homes. Those people in MSD2, under these scenarios, seem to me to be reaping all of the benefit and bearing none of the burden for beach nourishment. They also don't bear the burden of building sand fences, planting sea oats, doing walkways, repairing storm damage that all of us on oceanfront do as a matter of course. So I would ask you to really, if nothing else, narrow that gap between MSD1 and MSD2, because I think they stand to benefit a great deal. I also just want to make another comment. I was very happy to see that our Outer Banks beaches, Dr. Beach ranked us 2 out of the 10 top beaches in the world or America, or I don't know, it was a big place. So those people that tell you, I never use the beach doesn't mean anything to me, it means a lot to all of us. It's the economic engine that runs the Outer Banks, and there's no getting around that. And also, with all due respect to everybody that lives on Sea Oats and South Dogwood, I feel bad for their traffic problem, but don't forget that every car that gets diverted from there gets diverted in front of my house. I'm very used to never leaving my house on Saturday or Sunday and having people throw beer cans and trash in my yard. I've had people get out of their cars and have fights in front of my yard. So I do feel their pain, but just remember, a lot of us have had that for years, and it's just part of living here. And until the bridge is built, you're not going to do much to change it. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. That's the end of the list, Mr. Mayor, but I'm going to ask if there's anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak to the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 town budget. If you could raise your hand, I would call on you. Seeing no one, Mr. Mayor, I will close the public hearing and give it back to you.
Thank you. Council, what's your pleasure?
Well, I think we should start by talking about the MSD rates, because that's kind of the elephant in the room, and get that one done before we dive into some of these other smaller parts of the budget myself. That would be my recommendation.
Council, we've discussed this before. We came up with the rate we felt was reasonable our last meeting. We've had time to hear a lot of feedback about that, and possibly have changed some of our thoughts about it. If not, we haven't. But anyone else like to speak to this issue? Leo? Anything you'd like to say or not?
We've talked a lot about it, and we just got to decide what we're going to do and move on with it. It's not an easy decision, I can tell you that. And I've anguished over it. And I can understand everybody's position and the 1175, but the people I've talked to on the internal side of the town don't think 5 is the right number for them. So, here we are. I guess that's why we get paid what we do, to make that hard decision.
You have anything else you want to add? Your thoughts?
Well, again, we've heard a lot from our Ocean MSD1 owners, not so much from MSD2 or from townwide, but we have heard some. And I do want to, well, first of all, I want to acknowledge just how difficult this is. This is not a fun thing to do as an elected official, to talk about raising people's taxes. And second, I'd like to say that, I think that the manager's recommended number for townwide was a little on the low side. I'd like to see it go up from the 3.42. I don't know that I want to see it to go up to 5. I would prefer that we figure out a number that's between the two, probably closer to 4 would be my preference. And then the 2 MSDs would be driven by that number, since that's the biggest effect, is the one that we set for townwide affects the total more than the other 2. And don't forget, we have lowered the amount that we are funding with the tax increases by, I believe it's $1 million. Is that correct, Cliff? By using unassigned fund balance. So that in and of itself is townwide money that has been put towards this project. So again, that's kind of, the way that we're trying to make it more equitable. That's where I am with it.
Thank you. Jim?
I forget the gentleman's name, but the 1175 is pretty darn close to what I was thinking. I can see 4 cents townwide, but again, MSD 2 and 1 will have to pay that also. I'm just wondering if it's feasible to reduce MSD 1 a penny or two and put that into MSD 2 and then still keep, the rest of the town at, 4 to 5. But I think Leo hit the nail on the head. To paraphrase what he said, it's time to fish or cut bait on this. We need to kind of decide right now so people can budget for it and so that Cliff can go ahead and finish it. We can get on board with the financial planning aspect of it. I'm not opposed to taking the townwide up to 5, but I'm not sure there's enough stomach for that with the rest of council. I just don't know.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Matt, any thoughts?
A lot. Spreadsheets is what I've been looking at and talking to people on every part of the argument. I keep thinking of debt share. I don't think about cents so much. And I don't even know if my microphone's on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's on.
I think of debt share in proportion to that debt. We got $1 million, $1,024,000 a year has to be funded. How's that going to be funded? And the MSD, in discussion purposes for me, is difficult to follow because MSD 1 encapsulates the townwide rate, MSD 2 rate, and MSD 1 rate. So it's hard to think about. MSD 2 encapsulates the MSD 2 rate and townwide rate. So I always think of these things separately as you have townwide exclusive of the 2 MSDs, you have MSD 1 exclusive of MSD 2, or MSD 2 exclusive of 1, and then the remainder. And I keep looking at these debt shares, and just for discussion purposes, if the town exclusive of both the MSDs funded 40% of the debt, that equates to roughly a 4-cent tax rate. If MSD 2 exclusive of MSD 1 funded 20% of the debt, that's about 7.5 cents tax rate. And MSD 1 funds 40% of the debt share, that's 14 cents of the total bill. I mean, if we could look at the town-wide picks up 50%, I think that gets you closer to a nickel. When a town-wide goes to 30%, that gets closer to 3 cents. I mean, that's I think you can talk about the cents a lot, and it's really, when you're talking about the share, the benefit of the project, it's the debt proportional share is just the way I focus on it better than I think the actual individual rates. Because everybody, I mean, there's houses on the sound front that are more valuable than houses on the ocean front. Looking at individual penny rates is, we're trying to assign the benefit based upon a debt proportion. So that's the only thing. And I don't have an answer. I have ideas and I have tolerances that I think we should stay around. It's a consensus decision. So.
Is 5 cents for the whole town within your tolerance rate?
It wasn't originally. That's about 50% of the total project. And this is exclusive of the MSDs. That means that the town outside of the MSDs is paying for 50% of the project. And that actually means MSD 1 is paying for less than 30% of the project. So I don't know. I mean, trying to assign what's fair in this scenario is a difficult position. I think I keep trying to step on the shoes of some of the oceanfront owners, some of the semi-oceanfront. I have family members in MSD 2. I have clients in MSD 1. I mean, not that it matters, but I have family members in other MSDs in other towns. I mean, and we've all sort of been through this in some ways. And I don't know that I would be upset at $1,500, $2,000, or $2,200 a year if I had an oceanfront property. But again, that's like personal taste. I mean, let's look at debt proportion. I think it's just fair. I don't know. Maybe I'm shooting in the dark. And we say that the MSD1 should pay a certain percentage, MSD2 should pay a certain percentage, and the town should pay a certain percentage, and then just let the numbers be what they are.
And you've already taken into account with your spreadsheet, the unassigned fund balance
Yeah,
contribution? Okay.
Yeah.
And you've put that on the town-wide percentage of debt?
I've just removed it from the debt service of
Okay,
the
so
annual
if-
debt service.
So in addition to, if we're going to think about debt service, you need to think about it in terms of the unassigned fund balance in addition to,
Well, you're correct on that, because that's another 250,000 a year
Yeah.
that is essentially
Yeah.
25% of the total service, and that's a town-wide contribution.
I'm just thinking when you're thinking about in terms of
Yeah.
the total debt and who's paying what, that should be part of your thinking, would be my recommendation.
You guys have heard this, but I was buying nails the other day over at Baco, and I asked the man working the shop there, is our resident constituent. And I said, "What do you think?" I don't know if we should even do this thing. I mean,
I'd like to point out also that right now, we're operating off an engineer's estimate on what the cost will be. Once that project goes out to bid, those numbers may come in higher or lower. So there is an element of the unknown, no matter what we decide here.
Yes.
Well, if it comes in too wild, that happened on one of the town or the county, and the whole thing got delayed
Right.
until they got a bid that was reasonable. So if whoever's bidding, or if they're bidding, the contractors get too wild, this project could come to a stop right now because we couldn't afford it. So that's something that needs to be considered. We can set a rate now, but if they come in way high over what the engineer thinks, we can't do it. And that happened once before.
And that's my point exactly, is that right now, we're basing everything off an estimate. And Matt, I'm sure you've done this, and I've done this countless times, where you try and project an estimate,
Oh, yeah.
and, you could be wildly off, or you could be spot on, either way.
But Matt, in your spreadsheet you were working with, I know what it is. We're somewhere, there's some of us think 4, there's some think 5. Is there a in-between point there that's negotiable? I've been adamant about 4.
I think it's all negotiable.
Well, no, but
There's a point where I do think that, there's some compelling argument, some of the 1175 argument that we hear is, it's a keen argument. I'm trying to find that letter, but it's also, using the average value of the districts is important, but it's also a little bit misleading, because their sound fund properties are valued $1.8 million, $1.9 million, and every penny on them as much as a penny on the oceanfront. And they're I would argue the sound fund is the least benefit of the service that's being offered. So, I don't know. There's another way to skin the cat is 4, 9, and 13. It's 4, 20, 7, 8, 3, 13. We're all kind of dancing around the same numbers. So I think trying to, if we looked at it as a negotiating thing, we're doing a contract negotiation. We got a manager's offer, like Elizabeth said. We got the oceanfront offer. Let's try to meld and find a middle ground.
What would you work with if you went to 4.5% for the townwide?
It is in some ways an arbitrary line in the sand to draw it at 4, 4.5. But I think the amount of opposition I encounter in my daily life to this, not opposition, there's strong feelings that we haven't, you all have heard it, but there's strong feelings about the project in terms of who should pay for it and
Yep.
how much they pay for it. And honestly, in some ways, 4 cents is already dragging a certain constituency kicking and screaming into it.
Mhm.
So let's find the middle ground, I guess. We got 11.75 is out there. That's one option.
If you
3
change,
and a
that's,
half. I mean,
if-
I think we're the 3.5, 6.5, and 18 is on the. Let's say those are the outer boundaries, and let's try to drive towards something in the middle.
So if we landed townwide at 4, then what would MSD 1 and 2 end up with?
Well, both of those sort of interact with each other, but
Yep, I know.
that's why I mean, it's like let the debt be what it is. I mean, if you, just for academics,
Mm-hmm.
if you were to assign MSD 1 40% of the debt portion, and the town 40% of the debt portion, you are effectively asking the town's going to contribute almost $500,000, and MSD 1 is going to contribute almost $500,000. I mean, they're equal contributions to the project. Those outside the service district and those on the front of the service district. And you're actually going, if you go to 4 cents, you're going a little bit over 40%. You're going like 42% or something, roughly.
so what's the rate end
So-
up being?
Something like 3.75 for townwide?
I mean,
A little bit more than what the manager recommended, but not taking it up to 4?
I think you can go to 4. I mean, I'd
It's easier to work with
Probably-
4.
again, I think it's debt share. I mean, what is the benefit to the different districts? We've established these differences, saying that there's different in decreasing scale of benefit, and let's try to assign what that benefit is, rather than like.
When you say that the town would pick up X percent and the MSD 1 would pick up X percent, does that take into account the fact that MSD 1 pays for their rate plus MSD 2 rates plus the town's
I
rate?
try to, yeah, I mean, that's where the dialogue is. I try to look at them exclusive. So again, MSD 1, MSD 2 minus MSD 1. So I mean, and then the town minus the 2 MSDs. So when I say town, I'm really talking about the remaining $1 billion of value in town that is exclusive to the MSDs.
Yeah.
If what I got on the screen, just for the benefit of the others, is this what is reflective of what you're talking about?
That's the approach that I was looking at, yes, using the percentage as sort of the starting point of assigning the rate.
And again, you're coming up with
And I just made those
1.024
percentages up, but
which means that the unassigned fund balance is accounting for 250 more because we have to come up with 200 more, excuse me. So, because we have to come up with 1.2
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Got it.
This assumes that
We're kicking in.
Yeah, we've already, okay. But it's not, the number's just not up there. I just want everybody to realize that it's not up there, but it is
Well,
being used for that purpose.
Correct.
Okay.
But this looks at each district separately. Whereas what I showed you was it included in MSD2, it was the value of both. But this, if you add up the total value, it gets to the 1.6 billion. But if I'm following right, this is how much value is in each area by itself.
Mhm.
If you take out MSD1 from MSD2 and then apply a percentage to each one, these are the total tax rates.
Clarification, that's cumulative tax rates, not.
Correct.
cumulative, yeah.
So if you change the tax rate for townwide to 4, show me a screen that would reflect that.
All right, here's where,
You'd be close. You'd have to go to like 42% or something somewhere. 42, somewhere in that area.
that would be close. Assuming you reduce oceanfront by that 2%.
It's really tough because you don't know what, the hard part in my mind is to say, how do you measure benefit? Who benefits the most, who benefits the least? And I think it's the hardest thing, that's the most difficult intangible we have to work with here. Are we not being fair to the townsfolk to make them pay a little bit more than a certain percentage? And I'm having a hard time with that. I'm sorry.
The statute speaks to need, not benefit. Correct.
Yes, I understand that.
This is close to one of the options that you put out to the public.
We lost you.
Went blank.
His side did, ours did.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what, this is what, and I added the 11, 7, and 5 there, but this is, that what Councilman Neal just shared is right at that option. Well, really 1 or 2, they're so close to 2.
I keep going back to 4 cents townwide. I don't know why I keep going back there, but I do. As being a reasonably fair to everybody, without breaking the bank for anybody.
Can
Any
you
thoughts
put
on
the
those?
other screen back up one more time?
The options.
Mm-hmm.
Time delay.
Oops. There we go.
There's 12, 8.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards option 2
Yeah.
personally.
And again, I think it's worth bearing note that on the bottom there where it says 1175,
Mhm.
MSD 1 will be paying 4 plus 2 plus 5. So that's, they're paying all those.
If we did 11.75, MSD 1 would be doing 30% of the debt. 2 would be 17%. In town, exclusive of the MSDs, would be doing 52% of the debt.
If you went, say that again.
1175.
Yeah, puts the burden back on the town.
Mhm.
Yeah, all these are the values collectively, not separated, like we were just doing on those levels. The rate's the rate.
And you get close to what we're trying to get to, I think option 2 is the viable one.
Should I go ahead and put it in the form of a motion
To consider
to
option
consider
2.
option 2 as the MSD rates? Is that an appropriate thing to do at this time?
Sure, if you want to do that.
I'll just see if I get a second. I would propose that we adopt option 2 for the MSD and townwide rates as presented, 14.15, 7, and 4. I'll just put that motion out there on the table.
We have a motion on the floor, council. We have a second.
Let me be clear before I second. You're talking about option number 2 that's on the screen.
Correct. Mhm.
I'll second the motion.
How, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't mean to
Motion is here, so now we can talk about, go ahead, Matt.
How does the personal property apply within the municipal service district?
It's counted.
It's counted.
It's treated exactly like ad valorem tax.
And vehicles.
Vehicles as well.
Now we got a motion and a second.
We've got a motion and a second. I'm just leaving it for open for discussion right now for a few minutes. Then I'll call for the vote. Unless nobody has something they want to discuss.
There's only one thing I'd like to say. We could kick this around till hell freezes over and still be at the same point we are right now. But having said that, I do not think we're just making a motion to make a motion and be done with it. We've put a lot of thought into this. And we're trying to come up with the most fair and equitable way of doing this.
If, Cliff, maybe you can share with us, I don't remember all the details, but from what we originally started out with the Carters was a whole lot different number. If you remember that, you might want to share that with everybody because we have been working on it, even though we're not getting a lot of credit for it.
I can tell you I recall the townwide rate was 1.98 when the Carters first presented this to you. Of course, they had 3 MSDs when they did this, but it was 23 cents on the ocean front.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the public hearing, I think I gave examples of 2.75 townwide.
Yeah.
Then it went to 3.42, and so each time the townwide went up, MSDs went down. But you're right. I mean, from February of 20, it's changed considerably.
Did the MSD rates actually go down because,
Yes, from what you originally.
because of their total that they have to pay, which includes the townwide rate? So it still went down?
Right.
Okay.
Every time the town goes up, MSD goes down. Of course, you were at that, and then add to that the $1 million you're contributing.
Yeah, which that wasn't in there at that time.
So council, we have a motion on the floor to consider option 2. We've had a second. That
Hold on
motion.
just a minute. I
Sure, Bonnie.
wanted to make sure with the clerk that I heard it correctly before I said anything. I believe the motion was for option number 2, but the numbers that were read were the total, not the MSD rate over here. So I
They
want to make
weren't
sure
the
we're taking the
individual
motion on the right numbers.
So the motion would be MSD 1.
7.15, MSD 2, 3, townwide 4.
Correct.
Sorry. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Thanks, Bonnie. So I call a question, council. All in favor of adopting option 2, MSD 1, MSD 2, and townwide rates, indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Same sign. Motion's made and carried to
Wait a minute.
adopt. Sorry.
I'll vote. I was just had a thought I was finishing, but I don't want to.
Go ahead.
I was going to just suggest looking at, a larger debt share to MSD2. As one of the people speaking tonight said, I think we've heard that a couple of times.
I can't hear.
Sorry, just a larger debt share to MSD2, just as a something for discussion purposes. I think you can get to 4, 9, and 13. And that's just again, I'm playing with the percentages a little bit to get there, but which is 42% on the town, 25% on 2. and roughly 30%, 33% of the debt on MSD one. But y'all voted already.
I can withdraw the motion if that would be
Well, I mean,
better.
it's just still discuss. I'm obviously struggling with this as all of you all are. So,
Yeah, it's
and
not
I
an
don't wanna
easy
be
thing
the-
to do.
The one stopping us move forward. I'm just trying. I don't have the answer, so.
Well, I don't, no, there is no easy answer, Matt. We can play with these numbers until,
Till hell freezes over.
yeah, or the sheep come home, where, but it's time to fish or cut bait because we're running out of time
Yeah.
to make the decision. And it's like I said, based on what we're seeing, we don't know. We think that's going to be close. That is our cost. But if it goes out of whack, we're going to be back at ground zero. We won't be doing it. And that just will delay the whole program, not just for us. The other towns will be involved as well.
I would like to mention, Leo, that you mentioned that we could keep kicking this around. I've mentioned that, but I feel pretty comfortable if we approve option 2 that I feel pretty comfortable with that because that's a pretty equitable distribution of the burden there.
Yeah.
And man, MSD2 is
Diverse.
It's diverse. That's
Yeah.
the issue with
know.
MSD2. There are some properties that are, close to the ocean and some that are not nearly so close.
Well, some thought that I've had that's been kicking around the head is if MSD2 set it the town-wide rate prior to the town-wide even tax rate prior to the unassigned fund balance contribution at 7.82 and let that be the hinge, and then that would provide a little bit of relief to MSD1. But again, it's not that it's trivial, but it is just rearranging minutia.
So you.
It's still important to people.
Suppose we modify the numbers a little bit, or you?
Do you want me to withdraw my motion?
No.
Putting it all on me. I just wanted to kick around an idea or two.
No, you don't
Make
need to
people wait for
withdraw.
our future business. I've lost the screen. Option 2 is 4, 7, but those are the cumulative numbers, and 14.14 or something like that. And then, but what were the individual numbers?
Option 2 is 7.15, 3, and 4.
Is this consensus?
7.15, 3, and 4. Is that correct?
7.15, 3, and 4.
That's going from oceanfront back. Okay.
Are you able to get that chart with the options back up on the screen?
If I'd stop stalling, he could.
I believe that motion passed.
Yes,
It did, even without
it
me.
did.
I have an obligation to vote.
You have an obligation to vote, or I can withdraw
not
the motion.
abstaining.
No, you don't, we have got to decide. I mean, I'm tired, I'm losing sleep over
I'm
this.
ready to, I mean, I'll
I'm
vote-
tired of
I'll
losing
vote
sleep.
with the rest of the council. We'll register my vote as an aye. for
Okay.
the motion.
Correct.
It's still hard, Ann.
Still hard.
We can go through it again next year, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it'll
can't
be
wait.
difficult.
Some of us.
Some of
It'll
us.
be, yeah. It'll be just as difficult
thank you,
next year as it is this
Matt,
year.
Thank you.
Thank you, all.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
A lot.
What was that
Appreciate it.
number?
All right, whatever, next item.
7.15, 3.0, and 4.0 is what we ended up with, I believe.
Yep.
But I like the visual of the
All right.
scuba guy.
Yep. I won't touch that one.
Looks more relaxing than what we're doing.
Now, the remainder of the budget
Mhm.
that and I think this is actually might impact this fiscal year budget. Given the feedback.
That's trying to.
No, I was just thinking, I don't know if we should have added in something to the agenda, but the traffic concerns that we're having especially after the last weekend. It's obviously lit everybody's mailbox up, and I was in it myself 2 days in a row. Not up by the north end of CO, so it was some further in on Hillcrest, but it was pretty terrible, as everybody saw. Accelerating our plans for no left turn, is that, I mean, that would be this fiscal year. Is that possible?
Yes.
Is it something that you've already put in motion?
What you've approved is in this budget, current fiscal years, June 26th and 27th for a no left turn.
Mhm.
In the budget, recommended were 7 more no left turn weekends, ending on August 14 and 15. Now, we could start that earlier. It would just require another
Budget amendment.
possible budget amendment, which we could, I think, do tonight. We could start as early as June 12th. I spoke with the contractor that puts the barrels up and mans this for us. They could do June 12th, have a difficulty with June 13th, but could do June 19th and 20th, if you so chose.
I think discussion with the contractor on the construction of COs would be the no-brainer, because that's no cost outlay, but just managing traffic on the weekend.
Okay.
We had it and we lost it. There we
There
go.
it is. Those are the weekends you have right now.
Yeah. I mean, those follow our traditional traffic congestion weekends. Obviously, with the last tourist season and this one, we may not be in any traditional model of visitation anymore.
It really, it isn't.
Yeah. So, I mean, trying to pick up the additional dates is something I'd be amenable to if the contractor can mobilize for that.
So we would be talking about how much additional money out of this year's budget?
$3,800 a weekend. So I would suggest you do a budget amendment for all 3 of those weekends. If that's, and I'll try and get them to do the 13th. If not, then we may not be able to provide it Sunday, June 13th. But it would be
3 weekends. It's the 12th. They'd be able to start. The
Oh,
13th,
I'm
we
sorry,
don't
2
know.
weekends.
And
That'd
then
be 2
so it'd
weeks.
be
2 weekends. You're right. So it'd be $7,600 budget amendment, not to exceed. And if for some reason we can't do the 13th, we'll just deduct that.
Could we adjust the amount of the budget amendment they already approved for their left turn to 3,800 to reflect 3 weekends instead of 1?
What's the legal side?
I think you could, but I was
Just have
just
it in
looking
one.
this up because I thought you were going to have to do this a minute ago, but you would need to do what's called a motion to reconsider. And I think everybody voted in favor of it, so anybody can actually make that motion, but that's what it would be. Normally it has to be somebody in the winning party.
Gotcha.
But since you all won.
Yeah, we all
You
won.
all get to vote. You all could make that motion, but it's a motion to reconsider that prior vote.
Gotcha.
I missed that motion to reconsider.
The
consent agenda
discussion
budget
was of the prior budget amendment that was
Yeah.
approved as part of the consent.
It's budget, budget amendment number 28.
Yeah, so there would need to be a motion to, because it was part of the consent agenda, you have to make a motion to reconsider the consent agenda.
Discussion members, I'll have a motion to have another budget amendment in the amount of $7,600 to increase our no left turn coverage for 2 more weekends in June, the 12th, possibly the 13th, the 19th, and the 20th.
I'll second for you.
Then as part of the discussion, Cliff, I think, well, he's getting from fund balance. Amendment motion from unassigned fund balance. In the discussion with the contractor on CO to try to better manage weekend traffic on that road, is that, I mean, I'm sure you already did that.
Yeah, we can, starting tomorrow, there's going to be a road closure except for local traffic, obviously. Residents will be able to get down that road, but starting tomorrow, there'll be that closure of that road. Question is what to do for the weekend. You know, if we were to close COs at 11th, we're sending traffic down a road with no traffic light. And I don't know if that creates a bigger problem than what we already have with traffic backing up.
I think we have to close Sea Oats at Hillcrest. And with the appropriate signage. Otherwise, people are going to go up to Kingfisher and around the loop and come back out again. They shouldn't even be in there.
Then is that something we could do on the weekend? You know, we could leave the traffic open up until 11th where the construction starts because it encompasses that intersection. And then on the weekend, there'll be no work on Saturday or
No
Sunday.
local
Right,
traffic at
right.
Hillcrest and Sea Oats.
But you're still going to have the gazillion cars trying to get through there to get to the next traffic light. I mean, we don't discourage that.
I think if we do that, and I'm in favor of it, we need to be very clear there will be bad actors that will try to circumvent that barrier and we'll still
Yeah,
go
we
down Sea Oats.
may have to have some enforcement there.
During construction, Barnhill will actually be out there manning that.
Mhm.
But on the weekend, it'll be a barricade with a sign. With periodic enforcement.
And that's this first weekend, this coming weekend. The next weekend, we're going to pick up coverage on no left turn and hopefully mitigate the amount of traffic going down that road.
The other thing we don't really know right now, we've had this super burst of visitors here over Memorial Day, which is pretty normal. We've got a little dead time here between the time the school would normally be getting out, which you might get a reprieve. I don't know the answer there, but we might not have the volume we had over the Memorial Day weekend. There's no way to know that. I mean, it's like we didn't guess that Memorial Day would be as heavy as it was.
I'd like to point out also that the focus has been, from so many quarters, the focus has been on a no left turn at the 158 South Dogwood intersection. But there is an incredible number of traffic coming from that US 64 corridor that is turning right onto South Dogwood. I saw that last year and I saw that this last weekend. So I have reservations on how effective a no left turn emphasis is going to be. But the only thing to do is to get into it, I guess, and see. But I don't know what the answer is. You know, you can close off South Dogwood. You can close off Sea Oats, but then that's going to divert it to Hillcrest. It's going to divert it to,
Waxman.
other streets. So I think no matter what we do, there's going to be some inconvenience increase to other parts of town. By focusing on Sea Oats only, I think we're missing the bigger picture.
We have talked about putting up the local traffic only at the 4 intersections on with East Dogwood.
Yeah, at East Dogwood.
What we were hoping to try to do is to see if there is what the effect of just no left turn would be versus no left turn plus adding in the local traffic only at those 4 intersections. In other words, just to see what the impact is,
Whether it works or not.
whether it works or not.
Is that the purpose of the traffic counters that we had put into the budget?
That's at least one of the purposes, yeah,
Yeah,
is to get more numbers.
so we know what we're,
Because we'd like to see what the impact is, rather than just
Yeah.
relying on, anecdotal evidence.
that's up to you.
I'm sorry.
It wasn't me. It was someone from the public.
Someone from the
Mr. Mayor.
public is asking to make a comment.
Sure.
I think, I don't know how much this has been discussed in the past, but I think the primary reason that people go that way is because Google Maps tells them it's much faster. And until we do something, I think I like the idea of closing this off with the X's, until we do something about that, where everybody comes back to one location again, to where it's not faster to go that way, it's not gonna change anything. Eliminating multiple places that you can get out and stop that traffic coming north, it makes it worse going north on the road and better going to the neighborhood. So Google Maps, when you come across the bridge, says new route detected. It tells them, go this way. So they all turn. They're all on Google Maps are all little ways, that's what's,
Mhm.
they're all right around the line. I think the only way to stop that is one, no left turn, and then two, put these or if you want to close off these 4 intersections and route them all back down to Highway 12 in one place. It's only this one stop.
I think also we need to be aware that we can have a no left turn on South Dogwood, but what has happened in the past is they make a left turn through Southern Shores Landing and circumvent it.
Southern Shores Landing has put a barrier up though. They can't get through it. Early on they did, but when I was out walking the neighborhood, that one told me what they did. And they barricade that
They do,
first entrance up there to the landing.
they do.
We kicked this idea around of closing those 4 streets early on as a next step. In other words, first we start with no left turn, then if that doesn't work or works like it did this past weekend, then we put the barricades up, and once again we probably can't put a police officer at every corner, but we have the barricades there and just hope we get 75% cooperation or better.
Mayor, may I ask a question? The point is the difference between the yellow and the red there.
The red was the next step. They kind of look at in phases. Red would be if council said there's no left turn, we need to add this to it. And then I took the liberty of putting those because those are other kind of cutoff points.
It's right on your house, Steve.
How could they cut, we're thinking of putting a no right turn there.
We're going to deal with speeders, and it's not going to be pleasant, but it'll be better than what the north end of town's going to be dealing with, I think.
We got to shut this off.
Yeah, let Mr. Mackey speak.
I had asked before if there would be some consideration of Ocean Boulevard split or cell towers, because in true to form, it was the worst this weekend that I've ever seen it there. It's not backed up, it's not people stop and go, but it's people going 45 miles an hour.
Speed.
Hickory and Highway, and begin to know what happens when they try to get back into the Duck Road. But if you're putting up barricades, it seems like one at that split would be a very easy thing to do. I say that without knowing what it costs.
Now, please keep in mind what we're talking about here. We're talking about putting up barriers through a great number of streets here. Is that what we want to do?
Well,
And that's just a question we need to answer, because we can cut off traffic from going down Sea Oats, but it's not doing anything for the other streets. So the X's up here on the screen, the red X's, we got 4 streets right there, and that's not even accounting for 11th Avenue and some of the other streets, so.
The split has been considered. I mean, I sat in on a webinar with the School of Government about a week and a half ago. I think the manager did too, and we were hoping to gain some insight into traffic management. And mostly it was about signage. But the thing that I understood about it, there's a federal document from federal DOT, and there's a state document from NCDOT. They have a fast acronym for it. It's like MINUTA or something, but it's a manual on uniform sign placement. And one thing that stuck out from the webinar is the largest purchaser of this document is attorneys. So if a town does not follow this document to the T, they are subject to a tremendous amount of liability. So closing the roads is something that we're willing to take that chance and go that road, but we want to go slowly into it and see how we're getting reactions to it with the traffic. So at least that's my individual thought.
in addition to that, when we're talking about a barricade, we're talking about a sign that says local traffic only. It's going to be in the middle of the road. There will still be the opportunity to drive around those signs. If you have a normal sized car, you'll be able to drive around the sign.
What does that mean?
So it won't be enforced. We're not doing that, but we are hopefully discouraging people from turning left, because most people, when they come up to the intersection of Hickory and East Dogwood, they turn left on Hickory. Very rarely do they go straight. Okay?
Maybe almost very rare.
I mean, it's.
follow behind them all the time going home.
It's
They-
just,
they
it
peel off at
hardly
Hickory.
ever happens. I mean, based on my anecdotal evidence of
Yeah.
walking on that street. So what we're going to try to do is discourage people from taking that left turn, plus the next one, plus the next one, which will funnel people down East Dogwood
Right back to the highway.
and have to wait at their intersection, which is a safer place for them to make a left turn and go north anyway, because it's a light. And there's plenty of room for them to stack without blocking someone's driveway.
And that will, I mean, we can poke holes in it. I mean, there's going to be unintended consequences. I mean, there might be stacking on East Dogwood that becomes it. But I mean, the point is to move forward and put things in measures that we
And
can see how they affect.
try it
things
and see.
and provide some
We've
relief.
got to try something. I mean, we've talked about it. I've been involved in these conversations, and we keep kicking and we've got to do something. It may work, it may not. If it doesn't, let's fine tune it.
So I've-
10 years worth of trying to figure out. some way to do this. 20 years, I'm sorry.
I would also like to point out that the streets in Southern Shores are public roads. There is a lot of misinformation being bannered about that these are private roads. They are not. They're public roads.
Town-owned.
Town-owned public roads.
Did
Yeah,
we,
so-
do we,
So do we
Going
want
back to
to,
my motion.
where's our motion?
My motion is to have a budget amendment to pay for 2 more no left turn weekends.
Yeah, and I'd second that, I
You
believe.
seconded it and we're
All
ready.
right,
I hope we're ready to vote. 'cause
So we need to vote, yay or nay.
I'll vote ahead on
Motion's
this
been
one.
made and it's been seconded. All in favor of Matt's motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion was made and carried, Sheila. Thank you. Ursula, do you want to say something?
Yeah, to your point, which is a good point, I was right on the sea, and right when they come up from the sound, blocking where the tennis courts are, Hillcrest, depending on the next. So they will come down. We had some altercations this weekend coming up from the sound, and the road was terrible. They wouldn't let them in, and people got upset. I think we need to do that. Do something about stopping where you said, by Hillcrest, not 11, but Hillcrest.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
It's a good point.
In other words, block CO's north at Hillcrest. Yes. Okay.
Well,
I
we've
think
got to,
we all,
South, yes, yeah.
we've got this approved now. When are we going to initiate the X's?
that was what I was going to want to talk about next.
It's just, I'll lead out. I mean, I'd like to see how the no left turns perform for a weekend or two. And I know we'll probably, if they don't perform, we'll hear about it. But at the same time, I'm still concerned about potential liability. I mean, you said people were aggressive this weekend with getting an altercation. Once a car peels down that road, it might lead a chain. And then, I'd hate for a citizen to try to act as a civilian enforcer and get engaged in
And
something.
especially in today's world when you read about drive-by shootings and road rage.
Yeah.
And that's what we're experiencing.
So you're in
I
favor?
might be naive, but we might see some positive relief from just a no left turn.
So
Steve
the-
and I won't, we'll get speeders. but-
So the 2 weekends we just added, you want to keep them as just no left turn weekends? And I
Yeah.
don't mean that in any way other than.
I would like to see how
additional.
that performs.
And then maybe think about the
Because
third weekend being the one where we try the local
we
traffic
are
only
prepared to
signs.
start putting the barriers in.
Yeah,
good with that.
let's see where we are the first two, and then from there, we can decide the week of the 26th and 27th. If we're getting the wrong results, then we should put the barriers up.
and I would repeat what I said a few minutes ago, we're not certain what this traffic volume is going to be in these weekends when school is still in session in many places. So we really don't know what to expect. I think this last weekend was kind of an anomaly and it just went crazy,
Well,
but it's always been, Memorial Weekend's always been busy. Not as busy as this one, but it's been busy.
But later on in my comments, I'm going to give you some numbers as a group. If you think we got it bad, Cape Hatteras, and I was talking to a friend down there, I mean, they are blowing away, and I'll give you the numbers just for 4 months. It's unbelievable. But I'll give you the exact numbers in my comments.
Okay,
Just
thank you, Leo.
to your point on when we would institute those barriers, maybe we should have a trigger, because our next meeting, the 15th, we won't be gone through that. So I mean, would we evaluate whether or not to implement barriers on the 6th of July? Or do we want to have some ability to communicate that to staff, or do we want to let?
When's our workshop here in June?
What would your preference be, Cliff? I mean,
That's what we were just discussing. Do I need to be directed to do this? And if so, it'll be at your July meeting.
Because we don't have a meeting planned for June the 15th, is that correct?
Not,
There's nothing on the
Oh,
agenda.
okay.
Nothing, okay.
I thought we might have one.
and at that point, I think you'd only have 1, maybe 2 days under your belt
Yeah.
to evaluate.
So we're actually be looking at July 3rd, no. Yeah, July 3rd, because our meeting is, no, we don't meet until
Until the 7th.
6.
So we go to the 12th and 19th, the 26th. If there's a major issue at the
the
26th, we would be waiting until the 6th. That would go
6th of
through July
July.
4th weekend with no barriers. Short of calling a special meeting, what would be the ability to give you that direction?
I'm gonna need some help if I have to have, what triggers that call? I mean,
Exactly.
does it have to be at the council's direction?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is it something that
There-
we could
there
direct
are-
him to do?
Your ordinance speaks to traffic control devices and when they have to be, when the town manager can approve them and when the town council can approve them. The things that the type of things that the town manager can approve are limited regulatory control devices such as quiet zones, play streets, children at play areas, bus stops, loading zones. Shutting down roads that are public roads, portions of them, I think, is in the next paragraph, which would be town council material. So you can vote now to delegate that authority to the manager, but I think you have to delegate that authority. That's not something he can just come up with on his own in the meantime. And one other thing that I'm not sure we're doing, but that reading the ordinance is important that you note that the town traffic map signage and stuff has to actually be updated for these things to be enforceable. So that's what you're doing is essentially editing the town traffic map
Mhm.
and amending it for a period of time. So it needs to be updated to show that on those dates to avoid what Councilman Neal was talking about while you're showing up with the MUT CD.
So do we call a special meeting for that, or do we take that on tonight?
Or delegate, Cliff?
We can delegate
Amend the
it.
map as necessary, given our traffic control.
Delegate the authority to me to be able to do lane closures. And there's not an ordinance to enforce with these. So you would just be delegating me the authority to add these lane closures to the traffic control map.
Would it be appropriate, and this is really just for timing, if we delegated that authority to you tonight, but requested that you sort of touch base with us individually before doing it, is that appropriate? Is that a violation of open meeting or?
No,
I mean-
if you delegate me to make the decision, then
You getting
you've already
input
made
is
the
just
decision.
getting input.
You've already decided that you're going to let me decide. So I don't think that's
What would you think? Putting it on you.
I put them up.
All right. Well, I would like to make a motion to delegate the town manager the authority to perform temporary through traffic blockade of Hickory Trail, Hillcrest, Sea Oats, and Wax Myrtle Trail at his discretion after observing traffic conditions over the next couple weekends.
I'll second it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Leo. We have a motion and a second.
Do we need to include
update the
amending the
traffic
traffic town map?
I think that would be a good
And
statement
I'll
to
add to my motion that I'll also delegate the town manager to amend the traffic map to portray existing conditions as they're implemented.
And I'll second it again.
We have two motions on the floor.
No, it's
No,
just
he
one with an
amended.
amendment.
Okay,
Yeah,
the amendment,
we're good.
got it.
Mhm.
All in favor of the motion as amended indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you, council.
Aye.
Motions are made and carried.
I was holding off question on that, but I'm wondering what's going to happen if traffic then diverts to Juniper Trail, 11th Avenue. But I guess we'll address that at our next regular meeting, if that happens.
It's going to at some point. There's going to be people
Yeah,
that'll turn up on Hillcrest to go out on Sea Oats again. I mean, the point is to mitigate the problem, not eliminate the problem.
Yeah,
Yep,
you're
we're
not
just
going to
trying to-
eliminate. They're coming.
They're
We just
coming.
got to make it a little challenging for them to get through the town.
Council, if it's okay with you, with all of you, I'll go back now to the agenda. And we'll talk
Thank
about
you
public
for remembering
hearing
me.
under North Carolina General Statute 160A 538.1, reduction of service districts, a request for removal of property from the town's beach erosion control and flood hurricane protection works, missile service district, page 12 in your book.
I sidetracked us, but we're still discussing budget.
Yeah, I was going to say, we
can close the door on that.
yeah, we haven't finished up
What we're going to do is the
the
budget.
recommended budget.
Well, we're
No,
gonna-
we did
It was
finish
my
that.
fault.
You're right.
It is your fault.
We didn't finish it, did we?
We did decide on the MSD rates.
Yes.
Yeah,
But there's a couple of other things, and I wanted to talk about, I know it's not very much money, but
Sorry.
the limb and branch removal, 25,000. It seems like Bonnie mentioned something about putting some stepwise in there, or where hours had to be shown by the contractor or something. Is that implied in this?
What we've omitted from that is that there was a escalation for diesel.
mhm.
Uh-huh.
If diesel goes up, then we'll, but we've taken that out. There's
Okay.
No consideration for diesel.
Okay. So
That caps it at 25.
he's asking for the $25,000 increase because it's taking him more time to do the work that he contracted for.
Right.
And are we asking for him to give us any evidence that he is taking more time? Are we asking for evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And it's backed up and supported through cooperation with the Public Works Director.
Okay.
So they have to be on the same page in order for that increase to be considered.
Okay.
And we're also trying to start to back off some of these piles that
Right.
may be taking his attention and shouldn't. And we're trying to address that by kind of a hang tag system that'll indicate when piles that he won't address the pile for
Okay.
whatever reason. Because
Okay.
the piles are too large, because a contractor put them there, because they're not cut to the right size, vacant lot, all sorts of reasons.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. That was.
Yeah, I'm glad you addressed that because that's happening a lot. People go in and clear a lot or have major trees taken down and their entire front of their lot will be stacked with stuff for the chipping program. So Mark is not, if I'm understanding what Mark told me once, they put a time limit on how long they chip a particular pile and then they move on. Is that correct? I guess what I'm getting
I
at
hadn't heard
is
that
if I go out and cut some trees down in my yard and I put that entire, everything out there on the street thinking that the town will pick it up, does Mark have limits on what he would pick up at my place?
If it's there legitimately, then it gets chipped.
Some people really abuse the town chipping program.
Well, there was a size, I thought, at one point.
Yeah, I mean, because in the, they have to, all the limbs have to be facing the same way and that sort of thing. So if he comes up to a pile that is the right dimensions as far as how long and wide it's supposed to be, and all of the limbs are facing the same way, then he can put that in the chipper and in 15 minutes, that
Right.
size is done. He goes to the next pile and they're not stacked the way they're supposed to and big and that sort of thing. 15 minutes there is not going to get the same job as before. So there's a lot of factors in, but what he has been doing is he has been chipping whatever is there. And what he said, used to take him, a day and a half is now taking 3 days to do, on top of the other things that he has to do. So that's why we're trying to work with him to do our part to make sure that we're enforcing that part of it. As far as, if you see contractors putting stuff out and, the Public Works Department and our code enforcement officer in West, if they're out in town, if they see contractors doing work they'll stop and let them know that they can't put the stuff out by the road. They have to take it off themselves and that sort of thing. So we're trying to help along with that. But yes, he has been chipping simply because the residents would call town hall and say, well, they didn't chip all my pile. And maybe the first time they didn't know, but then this is happening a lot. And he's just been doing it. And it's just ended up costing more money, taking more time, and therefore the
Okay.
increase.
My point is, there are people out there that are abusing the system. And I think Mark should put a time limit on what it would take. And then, and then maybe even the town send a notice to that property owner saying, this is above and beyond what the chipping program is for.
Well, we might want to, in our newsletter, put out some criteria. So the first pass would be everybody knows about it. Then if we get some abusers, that's when you single them out. That would be my recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Thank
That's
you,
the
Bill.
route.
What do you need from council to wrap up the public
Just,
hearing on the budget?
Motion to adopt the budget ordinance with the amended municipal service district rates.
I would like to make that motion.
And I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded to adopt the motion, the ordinance, budget ordinance as presented. Any further discussion?
Yep. Move.
If not,
As
I'd
amended.
call for the question.
As
All in
am-
favor?
As amended, just to clarify.
As amended.
As
I'm sorry.
amended.
As amended by the municipal service district rates.
What he
Yes.
said.
Thank you. You have that, Sheila? Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Same sign. Motion's made and carried. Thank you. To adopt the budget
That's adopted.
and tax rate for this next year. Okay, if it's all right with you guys, I'm going to ask for a 10-minute recess.
Or
Good.
even
I'm
just
good with that.
Be back at
Short break.
7:35. Sorry, Charlotte, she's got it. At this time, the meeting is reconvened. Cliff?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The public hearing is for Mr. Matasco. There was actually 2 requests for removal from the municipal service district. The general statutes are distinguished between a request to be excluded before the districts are established. And then after they're established, there's a process that a resident property owner can request to be removed. And that's what it requires a public hearing. There were 2 original requests. Timothy Panoff of 104 Ocean Boulevard is asked to have his request removed, but Mr. Matasco at 26 10th Avenue is here. The general statutes, it's 160A 538.1A1, request for reduction by owner. And so it pretty much follows the exact same process as the exclusion did. The requester shall specify the tractor parcel, state with particularity the reasons why the tractor parcel is not in need of the services, facilities, or functions of the proposed district to a demonstrably greater extent than the remainder of the city, and provide any other additional information he may so choose. If it would require a vote at 2 meetings, the request takes effect at the end of the fiscal year. So if you were to grant this exclusion, in order for the applicant not to pay the taxes going into next year, a second vote would have to be held before the end of the fiscal year. I think that summarizes what I have to say. I think Mr. Matasco, I'm taking your lead here.
I think that's fine, Mr. Mayor. I think the next thing we would do is have Mr. Matasco come up and make a statement. The General Assembly added this provision 3 or 4 years ago, maybe less, and they, in classic General Assembly fashion, they tried to do a good thing potentially, but they did it in a way that doesn't give anybody any explanation of how to do it. But essentially, you're modifying an ordinance, so it's a legislative public hearing. People aren't sworn. There is no evidence. Ultimately, if you find that the parcel is not or is in need of services or facilities or functions of the district to a demonstrably greater extent than the remainder of the city, then that's what your determination is on. And it's not as much of whether or not, you've already determined that there is a need and for the city, for the town. So the question is this parcel in does it fit in that category of having demonstrably greater need than the rest of the town? And so you're looking at it in comparison to the properties surrounding it that are also in the district and seeing if there's any difference.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So going forward, council, what's your pleasure?
Yeah, we gotta have,
The first thing is,
We
there
gotta-
is a public hearing aspect of this. So first
Well,
thing
you
is
had-
for Mr. Matasco to come up.
That's
And
fine.
then his opportunity, and then I'll open the public hearing and see if there are other people who wish to speak to it. And then we'll close the public hearing, and then I'll give it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is Ms. Matasco here?
Yeah.
Mr. Matasco is here. Good evening.
Thank you for having me here. Might be quicker if I just read the stuff I have. In the Beach Nourishment Project report, you cited a North Carolina general statute stating that the services needed in the MSD districts are in a demonstrably greater extent than the rest of the town. This has not been proven to be correct or true with the current MSD borders. The real estate sales, I've been in business for many years, are affected like a Nag's Head and Kitty Hawk. It was caused by the ones that were in the risk of losing it. Increasing the beaches for the rest of Nag's Head didn't increase the values, so they didn't really get a benefit from it. The only thing that really did increase is the rentals, which the whole town benefits from the taxes and the rental income. Using Duck Road as a border is arbitrary and capricious. it works to the advantage of some and detriment of others. If you look at the map I have up here, where I'm at 0.31 miles from the beach is the widest part on the ocean side. And that's in the green line, which is the red line's MSD2. But if you look at the green line, that's 0.31 miles from the beach. So I am not receiving any additional benefits than all the houses between the red and green. So they should all be part of MSD too, also, and paying the additional taxes because they're in the same proximity as me. And that's stated in section 16536 of the North Carolina General Statutes. And that's a law that was written, that I need to be receiving more benefits than them. And that's the reason for my request.
Thank you. Got a problem with our screen there?
Yeah, however, they got turned off. There you go.
Mr. Mayor, just let me know when you're ready for me to handle the public hearing. I know y'all wanted to look at the screen for a minute.
We're ready for it now, as far as I'm, yes, I'll go ahead and take on the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have a sign up sheet? There isn't. Okay. According to Ms. Schurzman, there's no one on the list. If it shows up any different, we're gonna have to have a chat with her. But is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this public hearing? If you would raise your hand, I'll call on you and you could come to the podium and state your name and address and provide your comment. Seeing no one, Mr. Mayor, I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you. Council, what's your pleasure?
Well,
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, we just need a motion to either approve or not approve, not accept this request.
Essentially, it would be a motion to amend the ordinance that you passed designating the MSDs to remove Mr. Matosco's property, or to not amend the ordinance and not remove Mr. Matosco's property from the ordinance, from the MSDs.
Do I have such a motion, council? One way or the other? Did you hear me?
Mhm.
Could you-
Well, I'll be unpopular. I'll make a motion to deny the request for removal from the MSD, given that this property is not distinct enough from the other properties within the MSD. They're still within it.
And I'll second that. Again, it's not a thing I want to do, but
Any further discussion?
Just that this is another example of us having to make hard decisions for the benefit of the whole. And when I say the whole, I mean all of town.
I mean, that's why they elected us.
That's why we get the big money.
It wasn't because we were necessarily the
Nice guys.
nicest people in the world. We got a motion, we have a second. All in favor of, help me out.
Denial of the
Yes.
request to be removed from the MSDs.
Do you hear that, council?
Yes.
All in
Yes.
favor? Thank you. All in favor of the denial being approved, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, on item number 5, public hearing for 279 Hillcrest Drive preliminary subdivision plat. I'll turn this over to you, Ben. I think this is a quasi judicial thing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it, Mr. Haskett, do you know if there was anybody signed up for the plat public hearing? Maybe worth going ahead and grabbing all three of the remainders, but leave the final public comment. Okay. There's no one who's signed up. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak to the consideration of the public hearing for 279 Hillcrest Drive preliminary subdivision plat approval or denial? That sounds relatively reasonable. Mr. Haskett. Sorry about that. I got a little bit ahead of myself.
Thank you, Mr. Gallup. The next item on your agenda, Mayor, members of council, is a preliminary subdivision request submitted by Lauren Van Riper. The subject property is at 279 Hillcrest Drive. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing that up. The property is zoned RS1, single-family residential. The town's land use plan has established it as residential. That applies to the north, south, east, and west as well, surrounding the property. Its current physical characteristics are developed. With respect to the town code with subdivisions, Chapter 30 obviously applies, all articles. And with respect to the town zoning ordinance, these subject properties have to also meet both properties, the newly created lot and the remnant with the house remains. Also have to meet the zoning ordinance, which Article 3, Article 4, and Article 7. The town subdivision ordinance establishes a review process for subdivisions that requires the planning board and the town council to review all preliminary and final subdivision plats. At this point, this is a preliminary subdivision plat, and they would, should you all decide to approve it, they will have to come back to you all for a final plat approval as well, following planning board review of it. The applicant is requesting to subdivide the lot into 2 new lots. The existing single-family dwelling and other improvements currently located at 279 Hillcrest Drive are to be located on a new lot 4A with a lot size of 65,393 square feet. And the remaining property is to be located on new lot 4B, which is the one closest to the canal, with a lot size of 34,720.3 square feet. Both lots, as proposed, meet the town's minimum lot size requirement of 20,000 square feet and minimum lot width of 100 feet. Both lots also meet the town's frontage requirement by providing at least 30 feet of frontage that abuts a public right-of-way or easement. With respect to access, a minimum pavement width of 16 feet and a minimum 20-foot turnaround area should be provided within the easement area. The 30-foot easement area is on the northern side with the hash marks up there, as you can see on the screen. With respect to recommendations from the town planning board and town staff, the planning board recommended approval of the preliminary plat at their May 17th meeting with the following conditions. Number 1, prior to the approval of the final plat, an improved access shall be installed with a minimum pavement width of 16 feet and a minimum 20-foot turnaround area in accordance with section 30-76(1) of the town code and subject to approval by the Southern Shores Volunteer Fire Department. Since the planning board has held their meeting, I did reach out to Chief Limbacher, and he has indicated that he had no major concerns with a 16-foot access with 20-foot turnaround area. Planning board condition number 2, recommended condition number 2, the public easement specifics, including maintenance, shall be shown on the final plat or in a separate document to be recorded. Planning board recommended condition number 3, a 15-foot side setback requirement shall apply to lot 4A along the easement and turnaround area. And planning board recommended condition number 4, maintenance of the easement area shall be the responsibility of the property owners. Town staff have different recommended conditions. We would recommend approval of the preliminary plat with condition number 1 as stated by the planning board, which involves the improved access, 16-foot wide, 20-foot turnaround, as well as another condition that has not been read that states that a note shall be provided on the final plat that dedicates the access easement for public use with the option for the town to accept maintenance in the future. So conditions 2, 3, and 4, town staff is not endorsing them since they are not based on specific sections from the town subdivision ordinance with which the preliminary plat does not comply. So to recap, town staff recommends approval with condition number 1 and then number 5 as read. That concludes my staff report, Ben, Mr. Mayor. I can try to answer any questions y'all might have if y'all.
I have one question. Typically, when you do a preliminary plat, it's approved at this level. But then prior to the final plat, those hard improvements need to be made before the final plat can be applied for, particularly roads, sewers, water lines, things like that. Now, the only thing we have here is pavement on that strip, that 30-foot wide strip in the public access easement. Can we make that 16-foot wide driveway needs to be done before?
That's included in recommended condition number 1. Yeah, that's prior to approval of the final plat. So should you all approve the preliminary plat tonight, that authorizes them to put in the improvements.
Okay, I got it. I misread that. I misread that.
That will
Okay.
have to be done prior to them coming to you all for a final plat, or the applicant could post a guarantee, a financial guarantee that it would be done, as in a bond or a letter of credit or something to that effect, some sort of financial instrument.
Oh, okay.
The ordinance does allow for that as well.
The turnaround that's under that requirement, that has to take place within the easement, or it can be on 4B?
Within the easement is,
How are they going to fit that?
within the 30-foot access easement, there would
16-foot
be,
drive aisle with a 20 by,
yes. If they have to expand beyond it, they could, but I mean, ideally, I think it should be within the easement area.
but if it was on 4A, would that meet the terms of this condition?
Well, located new lot 4A.
With respect to 4A, I mean, if they can get the turnaround area in there, that would be ideal as previously stated, but I don't think condition number 1 limits it to that it has to be within the easement
It
area.
just has to be a turnaround.
It just has to be a turnaround at some point somewhere for fire access.
Is that
It could be right at the front lot line or whatever.
is that a concrete driveway or what are we using?
The ordinance, the subdivision ordinance refers to improved accesses, and I reached out to the town engineer to receive his comments, because the ordinance also not only talks about the design, asphalt, clay base, it goes into detail, but it also talks about proper drainage. So I reached out to the town attorney, and he has suggested that the surface be a hard surface, whether it be concrete or pervious concrete or asphalt. He said that.
That was the engineer, correct?
I'm sorry?
That was the engineer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Ben. Yeah,
I wish I knew the
town
answer.
engineer.
I wish I knew the answer to those sorts of questions.
Sorry.
Ben, you got a lot of hats.
The town engineer, my apologies.
So at the planning board meeting, there's a lot of discussion about this 15-foot side setback along the easement. Is that something we can even enforce with our ordinances?
As stated, one of the reasons why staff does not endorse all of the recommended conditions that the planning board suggested is because the conditions have to come specifically from the ordinance. And going beyond what the current your typical setback requirements apply to, I don't think we have the authority to do that. So to answer your question, no, the ordinance doesn't measure side setbacks from easements. It's from the side property line.
And then, so that same would follow with 2 and 4. I mean, since we can't cite a specific ordinance, can't really enforce it, probably best to leave those conditions off. Now, 5 has a similar bent to 4. It's just that the access easement will be for public use, and we may accept it in the future.
Yes, sir.
I think, I'd hate to pick up another couple hundred feet of road in the town. Is there a way to instill that they maintain it using our ordinances to our standard?
I would suggest if you leave it as is right now, it would remain privately maintained.
And it has to
And
meet
then
our
someone,
standard.
the property owners would have to come to the town and request that the town take it over at some point.
Okay.
Without this condition attached.
I think
Go.
that the key here is that the way the law looks at it, there's a difference between being dedicated to public use and being required to be maintained by the public entity. In this case, for the setbacks, for the measurements and things like front yard to be there, it has to be an access easement that is still accessible and dedicated to the public use. But until the town decides to accept maintenance by either maintaining it or formally accepting maintenance in a written format, and via vote, the town would not have any maintenance duties for that. But if you don't have the public dedication of it, it doesn't necessarily meet the ordinance, which requires it to not only be an access easement, but a public access easement for
So just-
some of the
just
measurements.
Really fundamental things like trash pickup. Obviously, there's no expectation that trash trucks can go down this easement.
Right. But the public needs to be able to, in order for
Yeah,
it to
and I
meet
get
the
that,
standards.
but
So,
I mean,
so the
We're
the
not
difference.
setting it up where we are now sort of obligated to provide a certain service. I mean, are the tree chippers going to go down this aisle? And
No, but they
No.
can without.
They can, I get that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, if they were contracted individually to do it, but
Well, yeah.
for us, no, they'd have to put their stuff up at the top of that.
But they're going to be
easement.
taking this trash cans down to the.
Well, that's a separate question from the maintenance of the
That's
road.
my question.
And I'm
just teasing.
I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head, but I do know that it's a separate question from the maintenance of the road in terms of paving it, making sure that it's free of obstructions and things like that. If you don't take on that maintenance, it can still be a public road, but it's just not your maintenance duty. And
Well,
that's
there's some streets, I think like Gene Gate, where they request that all the cans go on one side of the road, so it's a single pass for the truck. I mean, anyway, I'm getting in the weeds on it. I just don't want to take over this road, but I also don't want it to go to pot. So.
That leads to my question. Who makes sure that road or that access way is being built in a way that's going to
Maintained.
last?
The standards in section 3.
Well, the private entity does. And the way this usually, it's a little weird because it's a little access street, right? But you think of it in terms of how a public subdivision usually works. A 600 house subdivision in some other county, or some other town, the developer has an interest in putting the road into standards because most local governments will not accept the road unless it meets the standards, because the developer has an interest in the future in not continuing to maintain the property. They would rather have the local government ultimately accept the maintenance of the roadway. And the only way they're going to do that is if it meets the standards that the local government has set for that. And even then, the local government has to decide to accept it.
I got a question for the fire chief. You went out and inspected that property or looked at that property. And you brought up the issue with the vegetation, that you could get a fire truck down there provided that the vegetation is maintained. Is there a potential problem with a hedge or something now?
It's kind of hard to see now, but I didn't really, honestly, I didn't pay much attention to it now, it's a fall day and I was up there with high applications and things like that. But, my concern would be just getting back, when you drive down Dogwood, it starts to close in with canopies or like, that's my concern.
Okay,
But as far as access to the hard surface and width.
okay.
Well, we were looking at 4A and 4B. I would imagine the intent here is that new lot is going to be at some time or another sold.
The representative or the applicant is here. If you'd like to ask her that question.
Well, my question would be, if it was to be sold and somebody else builds a house on it, then who becomes responsible for maintaining that easement, B or A?
The maintenance would still fall under private maintenance unless the town is accepted.
Well, is that going to be B then? Or
B or
A?
B's got, the easement is in favor of B, right? So B.
That's what I
B
said.
is going to probably have the maintenance duty, but that's going to be between the owners of B and A more than it is between the public and the town. One or the other of them is going to have to maintain it, and they get to fight about who, if B can't get to her or his or her property in the back, they're going to either maintain it or they're going to fight with A about that A should maintain it. And A is going to push back on that. But it's not a public issue. I think you'd have to see the easement. If I had to guess, I'd say B probably has more of a right to maintain it because they have to put it up to get to their property. But it could depend on how the parties agree in the sale of B.
So that was my question about the easement. The easement conveys upon sale from 4A to 4B. So the easement is conveyed to B from
Well, right
A?
now you have 4.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have the subdivision, you're going to have 4A and 4B.
Mhm.
You're not conveying from A to B, but A is the burdened property and B is the benefited property of the easement. And once one or the other is sold out of that subdivision, it kind of locks in that easement is there.
So
But one of them has to sell for it to be there, but the subdivision plat locks it in there. And then technically somebody sells one or the other properties, and that triggers that the easement is there in perpetuity, pretty much.
Since the subdivision requirement requires a 30-foot easement abutting the property to make it meet our ordinance, I mean, it might have already, we're requiring them to execute an easement attached to the deed upon approval of the final plat, correct?
Not necessarily. The easement can be shown on a plat.
But what if it's not executed and recorded? Then we've just allowed the property owner to subdivide a property without meeting the needs of our ordinance.
Because if they never sell, well, again, go back to a standard subdivision, right? You got 600 properties in it, you've drawn roads on it. All of those properties have a right over that road. They have an easement over that road to get there. Once they buy their lot, they lock in that they've got those easements. Even if everything else changes, they can say, no, my road's still there.
Yeah, I got you.
I don't care what you put there or what you change the rest of the subdivision and recombine things. I've still got a right over what that road was drawn on that subdivision plat as that one purchaser in the back corner. Same thing would happen here with B. But the reason that doesn't all come together really until there is a sale is because the current owner of 4 could do this subdivision and then recombine it all back and not have to do the easement and not have to do any of it because there wouldn't be a benefit. There wouldn't be a B anymore.
So he just never gets a final plat.
Right. Or even if you got a final plat,
It doesn't go
you
into
can
effect
recombine.
until it's
In most cases, you can recombine without any real issue. You don't even have to have any approvals under the statute. So that's one reason why it doesn't trigger things until there's a sale. But typically, you can't sell B, 4B, until you do the subdivision, until you have the final plat approved.
I was just getting ready to ask that. Okay.
That's the purpose for having a subdivision.
Right.
And for going through the process.
And then within the wording of the easement, those words, public access, will be in there because that basically is what we're talking about. We need to have access as
And that's what the 5 is.
And that's what
is to
the-
ensure
That's
that,
what 5
that there's a dedication to the public on the face of the plat of that easement.
I just caught up with you.
and that's the only place you see it is on the plat.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Is that easement then filed with the deed at any time or another?
Well, no, it's not filed. Sometimes,
Yeah, how does it-
sometimes the plat's filed with the deed, but what's actually going to happen is the plat will be recorded. And then when
okay.
somebody buys B, they'll record a deed that references
The
the
easement.
plat at whatever book and slide or
Mhm.
slide and page and 4B, and then it'll bring in the rest of the plat.
So essentially, before we get a final plat before us, they just have to survey the the subdivided lot and build that drive. Is that correct?
They probably don't even have to survey anything. They just have to build the drive. I mean, that's the only improvement. They have to do the improvements.
Yeah,
And in
right.
this case, the only improvement is the road, is the access easement pavement. So
Okay.
once they did that, or as Mr. Haskett said earlier, they could provide a performance guarantee for that. And you could approve the final plat with the performance guarantee in lieu of the actual construction. And then what that would allow you to do is during the period of the performance guarantee, you could call the bond and go and construct the public access way yourself.
Who sets that bond cost?
It's, your ordinance has probably got something in it. The recent change to 160D sets it at 125% of
That's what ours
the
goes to.
improvement value. And that's typical for the ordinances as well. I haven't looked at your current ordinance. But it's under 160D. They did some changes to the performance guarantees, and the town can develop its own cost estimate, or it can rely on the developer's cost estimate. But it's 125% of the cost.
The other requirement with respect to what they would have to do before putting in or before coming for final plat approval is not only install the access, but they also have to install the monuments at the corners of the new lot.
Hence the surveyor.
And the applicant is okay with the conditions as we've amended them or revised them?
The
One
applicant
and
the applicant is
five.
here. I
The
can-
applicant is here. Is the applicant want to talk to us?
Yeah, I think I was going to call the applicant up next.
Oh, okay.
So if you're done with Mr. Haskett, we can.
Sorry, yes.
We can call her up. Are you the applicant? Yes, ma'am. Would you like to come up?
Sound very fancy when you call the developer. No, I was just trying to, the original recommendations from the planning board, I didn't quite agree with because it was taking a lot of leeway with, well, we want our cake and eat it too and take care of the road and pay for the road, but you have to get limited. It counts against the property coverage. So, and you can't use it. And then you wanted to put a 15-foot setback on it and I have to pay taxes on it, but it's public use. So all of those were a little bit excessive. I think it's a little bit excessive with the 16-foot and the 20-foot turnaround, but that's in the ordinance. That's what it is. But considering it's one house, I don't have a turnaround for my driveway that can fit a fire truck. I know a lot of houses that can't even get a fire truck. But considering that road was already put in for the dredging, it's more than wide enough for big, utility trucks and commercial trucks. And I wouldn't put anybody in any kind of safety danger in that case, because I also am on the fire department, so I wouldn't try to put something in that would be problematic. But I would hope that eventually, it's just, I'm trying to follow the ordinances as they are, straightforward.
What's your, it's more out of curiosity, what's your long-term intended use of it?
Yeah, that was my question.
Sale or development?
Definitely sale. I'm selling my house and the house behind it because I've been hit twice on Hillcrest, just getting my mail out of the mailbox during summer traffic. I have 4 young kids. It's dangerous as hell to be on Hillcrest. I'm on the fire department. I can't even get out of my driveway to report to fires. It's just untenable. So I'm moving on.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
So you're good with condition 1 and condition 5. You're, in the end, you're not happy, but you're okay with them.
Is there anything I can do about them?
Not as I understand it.
Then I'm going to have to be happy with them. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Mayor, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone, I don't believe there was anyone signed up. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this plat approval at this point?
I just have a question. Please?
Sally Gudis, 156 Wax Myrtle Trail. My question is, what does public access mean in this regard, especially we're talking about to the canal? Who is the public in this case? That's my question.
Well, it would just be to the property line.
front property.
It's
Doesn't
going to
go
look
to-
like a road. You'll have public access over the roadway. but you won't have public access to the
To the
water. or
canal.
to the
That's
back
what I
of the
would,
property.
okay, I was confused then.
So so the roads that are out here are public.
Right.
And they're accessible by the public, and they're actually maintained by the public entity. This will be accessible by the public, but maintained by the private owners.
Okay, I guess I was confused without being able to see the plat. I thought it was you were talking about access to the sound, or to
No,
the
it's
canal.
just the hatched area
Okay.
of the.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Evening. My name is Mike Mullen. I'm on the north end of this property, on the entire length of the north end, actually. And I just want to make a few comments. I mean, basically, I'm not against, people doing what they would like to do on the properties, as long as it's not a negative impact to others. In this instance, I think it's a substantial negative impact to myself and probably the property to the south end as well. These properties were designed as larger properties that went from Hillcrest and stretched all the way down to the canal. The developer could have come along and done this from the start. They could have put these properties, they could have run a street in from 3 properties up and divided all this. I bought this property 4 years ago, my wife and I did, because we loved the quietness. We loved the fact that we could see all the way down to the canal. I have 2.5 acres on this north end. I could divide mine up too, but I would never do that because I wouldn't want to, interrupt or kind of destroy what this kind of section of this neighborhood is. And I really feel like that this will negatively impact my property value, undoubtedly. And for that reason, I don't think it should be done. If it is something that the council decides to do, I think somebody should go out and take a look at this property and look at the topography of it, because this does not represent the topography. There's at least a 15, 16 degree slant that comes off from behind that house. It goes down to where that line is that runs around there where the flood zone is, right? It goes straight down. And at the bottom of this hill is where this little turnaround would be, presumably. It looks to me like they'd have to cut into the side of the hill to do it. I know coming through the right of way, they more than likely would have to cut into my side of the hill because it's steep going up as well in order to get this right of way in. I'd be surprised if that doesn't have to be cut out as well. But I would say that somebody should go and take a look at the topography of it and understand what this actually represents, because I don't think you would approve it if you saw what this looks like.
Are you worried about the soil being stabilized there enough to hold so the hill would not eventually give away, or what is your concern?
Well, I don't guess not so much that. I mean, if it has to be maintained like in a road form, I mean, obviously you could have some washout once it is turned into a road. I think when they did the dredging in behind there, which that whole area down there was once dug out. It was all a big drainage area, from what I understand. So basically, almost everything you see in 4B was dredged out at one time.
You're right. And there was a big infiltration basin there that was
Right.
built.
I've seen pictures of it. I wasn't there. Obviously, I just bought it 4 years ago. But again, I am concerned about, what a potential structure would look like. Frankly, in my opinion, I think it's biting off your nose, to spite your face, because you're losing that much in value. Whatever you're going to make off of selling this property, you're going to lose in value of the original property. So if the intent, and Laura, no offense, but if the intent is to, make money off of this, it's kind of short-sighted to sell a lot off and, take off from your original property, lose the property value there to do this and leave this behind for the others who are going to remain. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Does anyone else from the public wish to speak? Ms. Schurzman.
Ann Scherdzma, now of 232 North Dogwood Trail. Good evening, everybody. I am not versed in the subdivision ordinance. So I don't know if there's any discretion here or not in terms of denial or approval, how much you have, how much the individual property right owner has discretion. But this is troubling to me as a longtime resident homeowner, somebody with 50 years of history here. This is not the intent of the original founders. I do empathize with the homeowner next door. I can imagine how I would feel if somebody bought 2 lots next door to me after I moved in 4 years ago, and suddenly I have, 2 6,000 square foot homes next to me? There's something, if that can be permitted, then there's something wrong about allowing this to happen. And it also sets a precedent. This is a large tract of land, and I'm not sure why the developers set this aside the way they did. And I don't know how many others are as large in the town, but I wonder if you start allowing people to sort of stack up lots because you have the space, you have the square footage, how many are going to step up and take advantage of that? And how much are we going to be carving the town and increasing the density, which is already an issue? So I just find it troubling, and these are not opinions based on what the ordinance allows or does not allow, just how I feel as a homeowner. And I appreciate that this young woman has suffered by living on Hillcrest Drive, and I'm terribly chagrined to find out that you've been hit twice. That never should happen, and the conditions on that road are abysmal. But on the other hand, this is distressing to me as a longtime homeowner and as someone who wants to keep Southern Shores in its pristine state as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak at the public hearing? Mr. Gudis?
I don't need to use the microphone. The previous speaker speaks.
We need you to use it so we can record you.
It's about the recording.
Thank you.
This is quick. There's a saying we have in the Quaker meeting. It is that the previous speaker speaks my mind, and she did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this public hearing? Seeing no one else, Mr. Mayor, I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you. Wes, you can help me, or maybe Cliff can. What are our options here? I know what it says in the book, but I'm just trying to see what our options might be.
Approve, deny, approve with the conditions.
We can deny it if we want to.
You can.
And then what happens if we do deny it? What's the next step for the applicant?
I would say that the applicant would have the option to go to appeal it to Superior Court.
We're going to have to go through the Board of Adjustments first.
No, sir. This is the elected body's decision, not an administrative decision.
If we approve this preliminary as staff has recommended, then when we could deny the final?
I believe so. But at that point, they've either provided a financial guarantee or they put in the improved access.
And if all the conditions are met, as I understand it, we may not be able to deny it. Does that clarify me?
The concept of conditions in your ordinances mean different things at different times. You may see conditional use permits or variances, and you have the ability to add conditions beyond the standard. So take a conditional use permit. The way the law works for the conditional use permit is if you meet the requirements of the ordinance, then you get the permit, and then the board can add, or the town council can add additional conditions related to zoning on top of that. Same thing with variances. If you meet the standards of the variance, the Board of Adjustment can add additional conditions. The way conditions work with the subdivision ordinance is it's conditional approval, as in they're preconditions. They're saying that there's nothing in your ordinance that allows you to add additional conditions. That's why 2, 3, and 4 were not necessarily appropriate. What you're doing is saying that this plat does not meet the face requirements of the ordinance, but it is approved conditionally upon these two things, 1 and 5, will make it meet the requirements of the ordinance. So if it met all of the requirements of the ordinance clearly, then you have to approve it. If it doesn't meet all of the requirements, you can deny it or approve it with conditions that are preconditions that they have to be met so that it will meet the ordinance.
So in your legal opinion, has the applicant met the requirements of the ordinance?
I think that what Mr. Haskett was saying when he discussed it, and the fact that these two conditions are here, means that the plat does not show things that the ordinance requires to be shown on the preliminary plat. 1, it doesn't show the turnaround. 2, it doesn't show that the access easement is a public access easement because it doesn't include dedication language or say anything on the access easement. Well, the access easement does say public, but it doesn't include any dedication language making anything. The public, using the word public doesn't make it. There needs to be a dedication block on the survey.
What do you mean by dedication?
It says something like easements as shown on the plat are dedicated to the public for public use.
Oh, okay.
Like the surveyor blocks, the owner certificates and stuff, that's where it would say something like that. So it doesn't say that.
So it's missing a requirement, in your opinion?
On the face of the plat, yes.
Okay.
But there are requirements that if you had accepted it conditionally with these two conditions, it would meet the requirements.
If I may add, there's nothing in the ordinance that talks about maintenance or whether or not, how to handle the easements. It's not in the ordinance to it, how it's addressed. And also, the condition number 1 for the 16-foot access in the 20-foot turnaround area, the ordinance says that prior, for final plat, those things have to be installed. So without approving them on the preliminary plat, they wouldn't be able to go for the final plat. So that was my opinion that even though it is presented as a condition, the ordinance allows for that. But I'm not encouraging in one way or the other. I'm just explaining my.
That's
logic on that.
typically the way it's done throughout the Southeast, where you show things on the preliminary plat, but before they can get the final plat and actually sell the property, they have to have those improvements in.
I'm just speaking to what's in the ordinance.
Well, the applicant indicated that eventually both 4A and 4B will be sold. The unintended consequence can be is I hope the new buyers of 4A and 4B are compatible, because that easement could be a potential challenge that we can't address, but it needs to be, I think, in my mind, considered. Because sometimes, there's good intentions, but there can be arguments, and then there's lawsuits and everything else falls apart on it.
This is in effect a flag lot. It's not obviously technically, but in effect it is. And that's the part that bothers me. We go to a lot of effort to eliminate those in town or not allow them in future development. I mean, if you had an 80-acre property, you wouldn't be able to divide a lot out like this. But the current ordinance doesn't really allow us to deny this application because it meets the needs of it. So I just want to throw out there, if we feel compelled legally to move forward with this, we need to have the planning board, or I always put stuff on you, Wes. I would now like to figure out, I mean, it's that wording, both lots also meet the town's frontage requirement by providing at least 30 foot of road of frontage. I think it should say just abuts a public right of way. I mean,
And
I'm
that's
not an
common.
attorney, Ben, so.
That's more common. I think, if you notice, there's an email from me from 10 years ago in here.
I heard about it in the planning board.
That the language necessarily hadn't changed, although I was much smarter then, I think. But it's definitely odd that you allow an access easement to be.
Can you think of any reason in town why that was written, or is it just?
I think it was a mistake.
Yeah.
I think it was someone who didn't recognize that it's a way to create a potential flag lot without creating a flag lot.
Have we had any other requests to do something similar to this and approved it, or is this a first time for us?
This is the first time since I've been here in 2009 anyway.
Yeah.
I know since this request has come in, there has been one verbal inquiry with a similar situation where there's land, ample land, width and area where they may want to mimic what's being done here.
So spell this out in plain English. There's only two elements of the ordinance that you two have adjusted that they have not met, correct? The prior to the approval, section 1 and 5.
Well, like I said earlier, there's nothing in the ordinance that addresses easements. So that's just something that has to occur, as been stated earlier, in order for the public access easement, or in order for it to satisfy the 30-foot requirement, the 30-foot frontage requirement. It has to be a public easement.
Are we allowed to refuse that this becomes a public access easement?
I'll have to ask the town attorney.
Because then it wouldn't meet. the
That's a good
ordinance.
question. That's a good question. Glad you asked that.
You're asking if it has to be a public
I'm
easement?
really asking Ben, but he's avoiding me.
He's
If it's not a
he's
public
running
easement.
he's running
then-
his line there.
He's looking at his 10-year-old easement. It's a Hotmail account.
I've already read that part. I'm looking at what the preliminary plat has to show.
Wes, while Ben's looking for that answer, can you explain why this is not a flag lot? I had asked you that question before, but
Because the flag lot, the pole portion of the flag would be extending from 4B all the way to the right of way to Hillcrest. And in this case, that's not part of the lot. That is why there's an easement to provide access to it.
okay,
A flag lot would have a 30-foot wide strip of land that is part of that lot.
That's conveyed over.
That is all one piece. And in this case, there is an easement that provides access over lot 4A to get to 4B.
This easement encumbers a different lot.
Yeah, the easement is in the place of the pole of the flag.
okay, so it's not a flag lot
It's not.
because the easement is not a part of that lot.
Correct.
And our ordinances that restrict development of flag lots don't really reference the rear, which is the part that is a flag on the remaining portion.
The lot widths have to be 100 feet, and that's measured from the building setback line, and all that is tied into the 30-foot frontage that is also, as Ben stated, it can be from a right-of-way or from an easement. And then the lot width is 100 feet. That's why you see the 25-foot building setback line shown on 4B, and at that point, that's where the lot has to be 100 feet wide.
Because Matt's right, it does appear to be a flag lot, but by technicality, it is not.
Correct.
And the other way, then it's a dead-end road. It needs to have a traffic way diameter of 80 feet.
There's also, if there's a cul-de-sac
It's-
or turnaround area.
Yeah.
And Mr.
Is it
Limbacher,
appropriate
you,
to table this until? we
I was
have
just
a-
going to ask, do
a
we have
deeper-
another option other than just approve, deny, or approve with conditions? Do we have a third option of postponing?
Yes.
As, and
You can
specifically
table- you can
request
table it
to
to another
look
meeting.
into public access easement.
Say that again.
I mean, if we can't allow, wow.
You can't.
Do
you
we
can
have to
table
allow
it
the
and-
easement? Because
you
then
can-
I mean, easement isn't created right now. If we don't create the easement, then it doesn't meet the town ordinance.
Well, okay,
That's-
so the easement portion, the dedicated portion, is part of the final plat. So section 30-125-12B, certificate of ownership and dedication, has to be on the final plat. Okay, so that's a condition that can be met in between. But we're talking about the preliminary plat. The key problem with the preliminary plat that you have in front of you is that it does not have pavement widths, number one. It doesn't have the proposed showing of the driveway turnaround. So it doesn't show on its face that it meets those standards. So your choice is either to deny it because it doesn't meet the standards, or to approve it conditionally upon it being modified to meet those standards, and then having the final plat show that and the improvements being installed appropriately. Or you could table it and think about it a little bit longer and answer it at your next meeting.
Council, my suggestion would be that we deny it because it doesn't meet the standards, and have her bring it back when it does. Or have the person that owns it bring it back when it does. That's just my take.
And those standards are having the concrete or the driveway improved?
20-foot turnaround. I would be curious to see where the
The
turnaround.
plot here would have to show all that.
The preliminary plat would have to show the things that we've just been discussing.
That's what I'm saying, what this is.
Yeah.
And it
Plus
also-
the dedicated easement.
It also doesn't show the setback line on the north side of 4A. I haven't investigated, that there was a condition in here about the running the setback line from the access easement. I haven't investigated whether or not you could or couldn't do that. But at a minimum, you're supposed to show the setback line. If it's from the northern property line, then it needs to be shown on the plat. It's not. If it's from the access easement, it needs to be shown on the plat, and it's not. So there is no setback line shown.
If we vote to deny it this evening, is there a requirement that it goes back to the planning board again before it comes to us, or can it come back to us with a preliminary plat with the things that we're requesting?
If you vote to deny it, it's got to go through the process again.
It's got to go back to the planning board.
Correct.
Is there any precedent for that, denying a preliminary plat on condition that those improvements be installed?
Not installed.
I mean, typically the preliminary plat, just like Wes has done here, puts conditions on it before it can become a final plat that goes up for approval. And I think the reason for that is to help the developer or the seller of a property having to invest all that money in making those improvements and then have it come back to our board and then we still deny it.
It needs to correct the paperwork of the plat and then come forward.
Yeah, and I think that
That's
the key here is
not doing the
that
work,
you've
but
got
just
the.
showing it on paper.
That's correct. But the key is that you've got the ability, you have to approve it if it shows everything and it meets all the requirements. You don't have a choice. If it doesn't show everything, then you have a choice to either deny it or approve it conditionally upon it fixing those problems. I think what you could do is look at this on a spectrum. Okay, a little problem at one end, but what if someone came to you with an empty plat and said, well, just approve it conditionally on me meeting everything in the ordinance?
Yeah.
It's not much, you clearly can deny an empty piece of paper that comes to you, but you could also technically approve it upon drawing it so it met the requirements. So I think that what the statute or what the ordinance has given you here is the ability to have that conditional approval to try and help people who miss something if you want to provide that form of approval.
They can't sell the lot until they have a final plat approval, correct?
They might have to have it recorded, but.
Well,
You've got
yes,
to have a final
yes.
plat.
So
They
I think
can't-
it's
and
kind
like,
of,
what I'm going to say is they can't lawfully sell it. That doesn't mean that they can't sell it and that there has to be a problematic procedure to deal with it. But
I think it would be highly unorthodox for us to turn it down to require those improvements be made prior to the preliminary plat being approved, because there's no guarantee that we would approve the preliminary plat.
I don't think that's what Tom's asking when he said to deny it. Until the document shows that it's going to be consistent with the ordinance with the roadway width and the turnaround and the easement, the setback lines that are missing. just bring it better into conformity to our ordinance. She doesn't have to lay any gravel or
No,
asphalt.
she just has to, the preliminary plat needs to show what we've been talking about, the elements that are missing, including the language about the easement.
If we do deny it, and this is a question for Ben again, because I want to be respectful of vested rights and that she has tried to meet all the conditions of our existing ordinance, but I'd like to try to amend the ordinance and ask the planning board to look at removing easement from the language. But she's got vested rights already through application, right?
Not if you deny it, but certainly she could reapply with the fixes before you could have anything approved. As long as her application comes in before the actual amendment is voted on and approved by the town council, she would have vested rights at that point to use. She'd actually have what's called permit choice. She would get to decide which provisions
terms
she
it's
gets
under,
to
yeah.
use.
So if we deny it, it's a new clock for her.
It is.
New clock starts and you gotta go back to the planning board.
Yeah, and if we-
And she would have to repay the application fees.
All of that.
It's a new.
So it would go back to the planning board for what purpose then? Yeah, I mean, I'm asking Elizabeth because she's the one who brought that up. I mean, what would be the purpose for sending it back to the planning board then?
They said
This
it would,
this wouldn't be a sending it back. If there is a vote of this board to deny it, it's done. And for her to try again, she would
have to go through the
she would have
process
to go through
again.
the whole process.
That's what I was
again.
asking.
Okay.
If we vote
And-
tonight. Now, the question, if we vote to table, can the applicant bring us a new preliminary plat with the information that we've talked about tonight? And can we consider that instead of the one that is in front of us now?
I would probably do that if I were the applicant.
Well, I think that's what we ought to do then.
Yeah.
That seems to be the least
Burdensome.
burdensome to the applicant. If we table it, she has the time to get a preliminary plat that shows all the information that we're talking about. And then we can have, I guess we'd be reopening the public hearing because we would close it or however that works. I'm not really sure on that.
Hold a separate public hearing.
Or a brand new public hearing.
Well, you've already closed the public hearing.
Mhm.
You could reopen it and let people have their input on an amended plat if the applicant brought you an amended plat in that time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, I still have reservations about that because this is not the way it's normally done. They've met the requirements. Our town planner has put some recommendations on it that they have to meet before it gets a final plat. So I'm just not on board with having her go out there or the 4A having to go out there and start spending money to make all these improvements.
No, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about a new preliminary plat.
With the detail we've asked.
With the setbacks, the dedicated easement language and
I still
something
think
else.
it's just a delaying of time because she's got to do what Wes is recommending here anyway. I think we're just delaying the process.
Well, I'm a little confused about where the turnaround's gonna
Yeah.
go and where our ordinance asks for it to go. So I'd like to see it on a piece of paper. So I'd like to either, I don't know, move on. We don't even have to vote to table it. We can just move on, can't we? I'm just teasing you, Ben. We can vote.
Did you have a question you wanted to ask, ma'am?
Am I allowed to ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Sure.
A little confused, because it sounds like things are getting changed after the fact. I was sold the property as a subdividable lot. It was originally sold as a subdividable lot. Those 3 lots are subdividable lots, as I was told, because of the dredging. When the dredging went in, it was part of the deal. Septics were pre-approved for that area. So it was part of the original, way back when, use. So now I've spent a lot of time speaking with Wes, speaking with the surveyors, following letters of the rules. as you have them set. I'm not trying to increase the density. I'm not putting in 7 houses. I'm putting in 1. It's not 2. There's already a house there. I'm not even, at this point, I'm a little frustrated, but if it was sold and originally intended as 2 properties, and I'm following the letters of the law, and I do what Wes has told me specifically, and we went back several times, I've already had this preliminary plat drawn 4 times. With the 15-foot setback, then without the 15-foot setback, with the 12-foot, without this, take this in, put it out, put this in, put it out, racking up quite a bit of money and time. And I was under a time crunch that I had to have it in because the planning board has to have it for a month. Now you're talking about tabling it, and you're not going to have a June, July meeting. Now we're talking July. If I even get it for sale, I have kids that are in schools that I need to move. You're moving the goalposts when you've already got them preset and written down. So I'm a little confused.
This is the first I've
These
seen
conditions
this plat,
came
so-
after I had the preliminary put into the primary.
Well, they're
I
conditions.
asked what was needed, and I was told by Wes, this is what you need. I put it in, and now you're saying that's not what was going, which, okay, but we've been through that 4 times already, and now we've gotten to this point where you're going to flat out deny, and I'm going to have to go through all this again.
I personally very much empathize with you. I deal with it every day, pulling permits on everything that we do. I mean, there's always a lot back and forth, and I can totally sense your frustration and feel it because you've tried very hard to meet the letter of the law. There's aspects of this development that trouble me a little bit because it's. I would like to see some of the improvements not done physically, but on the property. If I had been the first person you talked to, I probably would have been consistent all along. I mean, I'm trying to look outside the individual, look like if you're anybody coming off the street. I mean, I certainly can appreciate what you've been through and how much trouble you've gone to push this. And I would like to see it drawn out and how it's going to work. There's elements to it that just don't see 100% clear. Maybe you've had it done already once and we just didn't get to see that plat. This is the plat that was submitted to us.
That was the plat I was told that follows the ordinances that was requested. I
Well,
had the 15-foot
These
setback.
conditions show that it doesn't follow the ordinance because there's elements on it that don't meet the ordinance. So that's where I'm having a disconnect from. I mean, I understand that your interpretation of what you're told and you're trying to follow that. I've been in that position a million times. I mean, you go, look, what do I need to produce this permit? You get it. Oh, you need something. I mean, it's frustrating, believe me. And I hear you. But part of what's in this list of conditions that were given to us from the staff are conditions that apply to our ordinances that aren't met by that piece of paper.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm in total agreement with that, though.
When we go do a commercial site plan, we have a tech review, we go through all this preliminary stuff behind the scenes, we go submit it to the planning board, the planning board can attach conditions to it, and sometimes it changes, sometimes it doesn't. But if there's a thing on our commercial site plan that does not meet the ordinance, it doesn't get very far.
Yeah, I can't find myself voting to table this.
Well,
Yeah, we either got to do that or deny it or approve it.
We've got a motion on the floor right now
To table it.
I thought it was
to table
deny
it, right. Has it been seconded?
I don't think so.
No, the motion was made, it's not seconded.
I'm sorry. What was the motion?
I thought it was to
I'm
deny
missing
it.
something here.
Yeah, I don't remember a motion.
No, we discussed the motion.
There is no motion.
There is no motion.
No, we discussed the options we had.
Correct.
Then I'd like to make a motion to approve the subdivision of Lot 279 Hillcrest Drive as presented with the conditions from our planning board. Do I need to read each of those conditions out?
I don't think so.
Jim, I would probably support your motion if you would say conditions 1 then 5 and not the other conditions of the planning board. If I'm allowed to interject. Because I do think we're delaying the inevitable. She's met the letter of the law.
She has, and I think she deserves approval of this.
Just amend it to include
one and
item
five.
1 and
Conditions 1 and
5.
5.
And
Conditions
actually,
1 and 5.
I would add 3 as well, now that I look at that more carefully, the list.
Now you mention it, man.
I'm sorry, but you had me read through
feel
the
like our
whole list
applicant.
of everything that needs to be on the preliminary plat. One of the things that's a subdivision is the setback, and so 3 is showing.
And that
the-
applies to the easement, not just the lot line.
I would, and it's not to show it along the easement, but to show where the
Oh,
setback
okay.
is.
Gotcha.
I think I would modify 3.
Well, yeah, 3 says to apply it along the easement. We would just say to show it in place along the lot line.
Yeah.
Jim, you got,
Just has to be shown on the plat.
you good to rephrase that?
Yes.
So do we have a motion or not?
Hold on, we're getting there.
Well, I thought he made the motion.
Well, I made the motion.
Is he are you,
Are you going to amend it
I
with
I
number
amended it.
3?
You want to, I'll start it over since I jumped in and ran roughshod all over your motion.
All right, you said 1 and 5.
3?
1 and 5, and then 3 with the change that instead of the setback along the easement, along the lot line.
And turnaround area.
In turn, I don't know if it would apply to the turnaround area.
Why are
Because
those
that's
words in
not
there?
where that's not where a setback is set forth in our ordinance.
I think it needs to show, it might need to show the turnaround area, but the easement, that lot line, the setback does not necessarily.
Yeah, the setback applies to the lot line.
So strike through the words "and turnaround area"?
Or we could just say a 15-foot side setback requirement that applies to lot 4A. Strike the rest.
Which starts from the property line, not the southern
Whatever.
easement line.
Yes. Well, yes, whatever requirements will be shown.
Why don't we let Ben provide the wording
That's fine by me.
for number 3?
I've got it.
I think what you would want, what the combination of Councilman Connors and Councilman Neal is putting together is a motion to approve the preliminary plat with conditions 1 and 5, and a condition that a 15-yard side setback requirement be shown along the northern property line of Lot 4A, and that the turnaround area be shown on the plat. And if
I'll
that-
make that motion as stated by the town attorney.
Or, yeah, that's fine. That's good.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, council? You have that, Sheila?
I will have discussion after.
All right. I call for the vote. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion as made by Mr. Connors, indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Same sign? No.
No, I
And
would
then
like
the
to
language-
follow that with a motion
Yeah.
to ask Wes to work with the planning board to amend the language that
Agreed.
removes the easement from our, I mean, investigate it. It's not a dictate, but you get the gist of what we were after, trying to eliminate some of future flag lot development, especially with Mr. Mullen. And I wish there was a little bit more.
Okay.
And down that line, Wes, can you just take a look through the GIS and see how many properties might we be talking about here? I can think of a couple, especially on North Dogwood, but just, could this be a developing trend? I mean, don't spend a whole lot of time, just kind of scan the GIS and find those properties that look like they're in excess of, I guess it would be 40,000 square feet that could be subdivided into two 20,000 square
Jim, excuse
foot
me.
lots.
We have
Do I
two,
need
three
to
more
make
right
the
there.
motion more succinct? Did you get it?
I got the motion. Let's need a second.
I thought I already seconded.
Elizabeth seconded.
Yes, she seconded it.
I'll second it. Sorry.
We voted on it and we
We've discussed.
discussed it. And we voted.
No, not for Matt's,
My
Oh, I'm
follow
sorry.
on.
You got me, you lost me.
yeah, the follow-up motion.
Just ask the planning board to look into the subdivision language, because it's specifically that, well, I hate to use the word
You need a
loophole,
motion for that? Just-
but it allowed it,
That's a good
public
question.
right of way or easement.
Do we need a motion or just a
direction.
direction?
We already have one, let's just vote on
We
it.
just vote on
Let's
it?
just keep moving.
Let's just keep moving.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we got a motion, we got a second.
Let's vote.
You second.
I did?
All right. All in favor of the last motion to have the planning board look into the same subject, indicate by saying aye.
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 That motion's made and carried as well.
Okay, let's,
Council, at this time, I'd like to propose that we table public hearing ZTA 2102 on eaves and public hearing ZTA 2105 use and occupancy.
Table to win.
Table them to our next meeting.
Next meeting.
table.
15th or the
No.
4th?
To our next
July.
meeting, whenever that is.
Next meeting's in July.
To our July
You don't want to
meeting.
just go through it?
No, I don't. Sorry.
I might actually vote against y'all. Right?
Well,
That's fine.
That's your,
I know, I know.
that's your prerogative.
So close.
Do you
Okay.
need a motion to table the second,
Yes.
last two?
I made a
Okay.
motion to table.
I will
need a-
second
I
that
need a
motion.
second. Now, I've got a second. Is there any further discussion on that?
No,
Have I heard from that?
If we put a 15-minute time limit on it, can we just go through it?
come on, Matt.
No.
Yeah, all in favor of moving, it, tabling the meeting tonight, indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Okay,
Public comment and council.
public comment. Any public comment left?
No one has signed up, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Council business. Leo, you want to start us off?
Well, I'll start it off because these numbers are almost like we're in the land of I don't know what. But for March, the month of March occupancy collections was 693%. Current year to date is 263%. I mean, it's like we're in the land of Oz or something like that. That's for occupancy. Meals is up 139% collection for March. Current year to date is up 45%. And I mentioned Cape Hatteras, and this was as on May 27th, the Cape Hatteras National Seashore reported that in a period from January to April of 21, the seashore hosted 588,904 visits, the highest level for that 4-month period in history. And I mean, I know we're dealing with our challenge here, but we've all been to Hatteras to have to handle and deal that volume. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're taxed to the nth degree, and like everybody, they don't have the help. Can't find anybody who wants to work. So, like the old saying is, they're coming, and there's not a darn thing we can do about it. It's like a 17-year locust. Unfortunately, we don't have them here. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Leo. I appreciate that. Elizabeth, you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm toast. Thank you.
No, I'm nothing I want to add. Jim?
I'd like to mention one thing about something that I heard here in the room tonight, and it was stated that our founding fathers envisioned low-density development on large lots. I'd like to also remind everybody that our founding fathers barred African Americans through covenants. The covenants developed barred African Americans from owning property in Southern Shores or living in them unless they were resident in a guest quarters separate. Things change in town, and it's our job to respond to things. And you know, you can't draw a line from 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and not be reactive to the forces that we have here today. Our founding fathers also laid out a street plan that made tremendous sense then as it does now, but who could have envisioned the Waze apps or even the computer when they were laying this town out? So I think it's incumbent upon all of us in this town to maintain the character of our town, but sometimes we have got to deviate a little bit from what our founding fathers originally visioned. That has been stated through the courts in the case of barring African Americans from owning property in town.
Let's not get into debate.
I didn't say fathers either.
Uh,
Never used a sexist term.
I'm not responding to anybody from the audience.
No,
It's fine, you don't have to.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
I appreciate
Matt?
everybody for coming and hearing us tonight and listening, and thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, fellow
Thank you.
council.
Everybody yourself.
Thank you,
evening.
council.
I'm about to stand up and walk out, but we need to make a
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
have a second? Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.